Welcome to The Hole.
All right, welcome to a very special episode of The Hole. I am here with Leah Bonema, Chris Fortney, Franco Del Valle, and I'm very happy to have Mr. Billy Hayes, who I am. I'm almost finished with your book, and for people who are not familiar with Billy Hayes, there was a epic movie called Midnight Express. Based on Billy's life, especially a few incidents which we'll get into. I guess that's the best way to inch into it. But Billy, you're from New York, right?
I was born in the Bronx.
Oh, nice.
Lived there till I was 6. My dad moved us out to Long Island because the city was getting really tough and he didn't want me to go bad.
Well, back in...
surprise.
Guess it didn't work out.
Surprise.
It didn't work out so well. You're talking about like 60s, right? When you were late 60s?
No, I was born in 47, so I was there. I lived in the Bronx till I was 54.
Okay.
1954, and they moved us out to the island.
All right. Yeah. And in reading your book, and the book is called The Midnight Express Letters, okay? And these are all of the letters that you've written while you were in the prison in Turkey.
It's a collection of them. I wrote a lot more than that in 5 years.
Right, and we'll get to the whole story, but like I've noticed in some of my research that there's major differences between the film and reality. Right. Which frankly I think reality is actually more interesting than the film. But
we'll talk.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah. And but the letters, the book is so good because you get the day-to-day vibe and how you handled it day-to-day instead of just a synopsis in an hour or a synopsis here and there. So I'm loving the book.
Good. I'm happy.
Yeah.
It was an interesting experience for me, cathartically. I mean, to write the first book, to get it all out, to go back to this one 35 years later.
Yeah,
it kind of blew me away, actually.
Yeah, and there are some scans of the actual letters,
right? The handwritten letters.
And now, did you have those the whole time, or did you have to go back and get those recently?
It's weird because I wrote. I was a writer. It's what I was. I went out on the road to experience life so I could write about it, like my hero Jack London.
Right.
I eventually got to write about it, but not quite the way I planned. But all the letters I wrote out through the bars, they could go, I couldn't. And It was my way to stay sane. And I every day, all the time. And I sent them out. People kept them. And when I came home, they gave them back to me.
That's great. Yeah.
It was terrific because I used that as a raw source material for Midnight Express for writing the book. Right. And I put them all in a box and put them away. And, well, if you read the introduction, you know the story. They're up in the attic. And one day my wife had me clean out the attic. And I hate to do that. And, once I do it, I'm taking all this shit out. And I actually had the box out on the street waiting for the garbage before she made me bring it back in. And I told this story to my lawyer, my friend, and he said, "What letters?" And I said, "Oh, these moldy fucking letters, 40-year-old of ink." So he wanted to read a few, and he did. And then he said, "You need to put them together, organize, annotate, don't change a word."
Right.
And that's, boy, it can be so embarrassing to read what you thought you knew about life so young and fucking foolish.
All right, so let's go back to that time. Let's go a little before. Let's go to 69 because 70 is when everything happened. Right. So let's go to like 69.
I know
I
love 1969.
So it's the free love time.
Right.
It's
sex, drugs, rock and roll, free love, no AIDS. God damn.
Do you want a minute? You can go back mentally.
Yeah, I never leave. Actually, I keep thinking I'm 18 until I look in the mirror or start to move around. It's like, whoa.
Yeah,
that's a long time ago.
We're all like that. So, so at the time, you're just, where are you living at that point? You're still living in New York?
Just the point in 69?
Yeah.
Let's see, I made my first hash run in April of 69, second in October of 69, every 6 months, third in April of 70, and in October of 70, wham, the sky fell on my head. So I was actually, from the first trip, I was in Milwaukee, where I went to college at Marquette.
Oh, okay.
So I did my first trip from there. I got all the hash back. I sold it to all of my friends in Milwaukee, made a chunk of money, had my motorcycle. Got laid a lot.
But how do you, but wait, you skipped one part, though. Like, how do you go from just a college kid to winding up smuggling hash to begin with?
Yeah.
So how does that happen? How do you wind up going to Turkey to begin with?
How much time you got here? Cut me off when you need to. A friend of mine, I was working in a hospital as a child psychiatric aide. I got no credentials. I'm an English major. I'm a writer. But I'm good with kids. And I met a head nurse at a party one night. And I asked her for a job. And she said, "What do you think the job consists of?" I said, "I don't know. Making friends with the kids." She says, "When can you start?" Next day, I'm working with these disturbed autistic kids, locked ward in the hospital. But I'm so young, and emotionally, it just blew me away. After a couple of weeks, it freaked me, and each break time, I'd have to get out and walk around the hospital. One day, I walked past the cast room, and I see this doctor dipping a roll of plaster tape in water, wrapping it around somebody's leg, making a cast. So easy, even I could do that.
Right.
And an idea comes to me that changes my life. 6 months before this, a friend of mine had just come back from Istanbul, and he brought 2 thin plaques of hash back with him in his money belt. Really
just
good
put it in the money
hash.
belt, and that was it.
Nobody searched you. Nobody searched you prior to that. You guys don't know. You're too young. You could get on a plane 5 minutes before it left the ground with chickens on the arm. Nobody would bother you until, not my first trip or second or third, just before my 4th trip. The PLO blowed up the first of the jets out in the Jordanian desert, the start of all the airport security. So my first 3 trips, nobody searched to get on a plane.
So, all right, so let's go to the very first trip. So you go to Istanbul. Like, you don't just wind up there. Like, does your friend tell you where to go?
He says it's cheap, easy. They sell it on the street. It's like, okay. I see the doctor rolling the cast. I've been thinking about hash in Istanbul for a couple of months, and I see this doctor rolling this thing, and it all kind of comes together. Right. So I get my friend and 2 other guys, and they finance the trip. And I fly to Istanbul, and the plane lands. I take a cab into the city. I check into some funky little hotel in the old Sultanahmet section. I look out the window at this magical view. I'd already known Istanbul. I'm a writer. I'm a history major. I used to read about it. Constantinople, Byzantium, long before Istanbul. So I'm ready for the place. And I get there, and I look out the window. I put my bag down and go right back down and wander around the cobblestone streets, and I find myself in the bazaar. And I'm talking to a couple of young Turks, and they speak good English. And this one slick-looking guy, Tuncay, with his curled-up mustache, who speaks great English and chats me up. Next thing you know, we're out back. We're smoking this killer joint. And we've arranged tomorrow to meet back here to do a hash deal.
Oh, wow. So
I just got there.
So they just come to you.
I just got off the plane. I'm wandering the streets. The next thing I know, I got a hash deal set. And I wander off.
Because you're American?
Yeah, it's because I'm so smart and good looking. That's what I thought. That's why I knew I'll never get arrested. That's what I thought. How stupid can you be? Yeah. Everybody, I mean, they were selling to everybody out there. And you're obviously a tourist. We're wandering around. Next thing, you want to buy a leather jacket? You want to buy some hash? Right. So I've arranged to do this, and I wander away from these guys, and I realize I have no fucking idea where I am. I'm stoned out of my mind. I don't even know the name of my hotel because the old brass key in my pocket, the name is all worn off. But it's like it didn't freak me out at all. I felt like I knew Istanbul, like I'd been there before. It was really weird. I wandered for hours, and then I found myself up against this wall, and I see this huge sycamore tree growing out of the center of a cobblestone road that I had seen from my hotel window, which is right above me. It's like, holy shit. So I back up and collapse and fall asleep, feeling like James fucking Bond. International man of intrigue. Just got here, and other than getting lost for a few hours. Next day, I went out with these guys. I met them at noon. They took me out, drove me around. And
so at no point, I mean, I guess it's youth, but at no point you're not nervous about any of this. Like, nothing suspicious. You don't think, I'm getting in the car with these people.
Because I'm a New Yorker, man. People don't bother me so much. I'm not real big, but I used to be real fast and nasty, and I did all those martial arts shit. So I felt fine. And I always think I'm too tough for the smart guys and too smart for the tough guys. Right, so either way, I can get by, usually. Right. You're looking for trouble, you always find it. I don't look for trouble, and I usually talk my way out of it first. But I felt, this is fine. And the next day I showed up, I went with these guys, we did this deal, and I got a bunch of hash, and I paid them the money, and the next day, and I got it back in my hotel room, and I opened up one of the plaques and realized this shit, it looks like dirt and goat shit mixed together, but it's not hash. It's like, I don't know what it is. And I open up a couple more thinking, maybe they just ripped me off for one. They're all goat shit. They just ripped me off for like $300. I just got here. James Bond ripped off by these.
James Bond just bought goat shit?
Exactly. That was my first day in Istanbul. And then I went back and tried to deal with Tuncay. I met 2 other American guys who also had been ripped off by these. And the 3 of us kind of go up and confront Tuncay, and he just ignores us at first. And I get right up in his fucking face, and he just steps back and opens
some balls in a foreign country.
Yeah, but still, again, I'm pissed off. I'm young, and until he opened his coat and showed me this pistol in his belt, I'm like, holy shit, that's way beyond me and my New York tough. Right. I don't want to be dealing with pistols.
Yeah, really.
So I've been ripped off, and it was rather discouraging, but again, I'm young and I'm resilient and I don't give up easy, and I wire my friend and he's going to send money. And next day, actually, I traveled around Turkey a little bit, did some sightseeing, went down south near Izmir and Troy used to be in there. Actually, thinking about the Trojan horse kind of encouraged me. I'm thinking inside the horse, inside the cast. That seemed to work. You know, I'd take whatever signs I get. And then money came, and I went back to the pudding shop, the famous place in Istanbul. And I met a cab driver who tried to rip me off at first, but I'm not quite so dumb now. And then we become friends. And I go back to his house, and I sit around drinking tea with his wife and his young kids while the cabbie and his brother-in-law press the hash powder. Hash, by the way, is pot, for those who might not know. Press it down into some plaques about the size like this, because I know I'm going to tape it around my leg. And
it's pretty fucking good, too.
It's so good.
It is,
right now, the weed now is unbelievable. Because you got, for the last 30 years, all these botanist kids have been growing the shit. Back then, most of the weed in the States was pretty sucky. Occasionally, you'd get good pot. But the hash from Istanbul was unbelievable, or anywhere over there. Right. Now it's evened out. But back then, yeah, it was great hash. So I don't know. I get lost telling these stories. Where was I? Where are we?
So you're at are you on hash now, Billy? No,
I wish you got something to smoke. Roll it up, brother. Roll it up. I'll smoke it.
I wish. So all right. So you're at this guy's house now, and he's putting it together for you. Which again, go into this guy's house after you just got ripped off. That takes balls too. You know?
Well, yes and no. But again, you know, when you're young, you're indestructible. And I like the guy. You know, I thought I was a pretty good judge of people. And I'm sitting there with his wife and his kids. We're drinking tea. I'm talking to his kids. Again, I like kids. I'm good with kids. And then we put the hash onto this bag, and we stop in a fruit stand, and we asked for two kilos of fruit. He's supposed to sell me two kilos, by the way.
Okay.
He didn't have a scale in his house. His scale had broken. Like, how do I know it's 2 kilos? He takes me out in the cab, and we ask for 2 kilos of fruit. And they got the balance beams. The guy puts fruit and, you know, little things, one more, and then it's all balanced. 2 kilo thing. We take one bag in, give the other bag out. He puts it on the scale. It's 2 kilos, a little bit more, in fact. Right. And he said, takes the bag. I put all of the fruit on top of the hash, and he drives me back to the pudding shop, and then I wander into my hotel, you know, with the bag in front of me, offer grapes to the clerk. Please, have a couple of grapes.
So your first time was 2 kilos also, the very first
Every time was 2 kilos.
Every
it was
time
the perfect amount for me. I could put it in the cast the first time, taped all the shit around my leg, bought a bunch of, I checked out of the hotel. I'm there that night, but I checked out so I could leave in the morning early, and I bought a bunch of fruit and grapes and chicken and shit and bread, and I had a pail full of water, and I took a little chunk of hash off for the night, and the rest of it, I taped all the hash around my leg, and then I dipped the plaster tape in water, and I wrapped this thing around the hash, and then this really kind of bulky, white, but beautiful cast began to form.
Right on top of it, yeah.
I put this cast on, and then, you know, I lifted it up by the window, and I left the cast up there, and I spent an interesting evening watching the cast dry, and I was a little bit nervous, but, you know, next day out, I go out, take a cab out to the airport. I can't believe how stupid I was out to the airport, and I go clomping through customs. And
now one thing, let me pause you right there, because, and I'm going partially by the Locked Up Abroad that you did too.
Yeah. I like that show, by the way.
Yeah, that was done.
That's pretty accurate.
It was excellent. Yeah. But you're walking in the cast, but you don't have crutches. You're actually walking.
I had a heel pad in the cast, which actually, when I was wrapping the cast that night, I was almost finished the cast when I realized I forgot the fucking heel pad. And the cast would be crunching on the ground. So I had a little bit of panic, and then I leapt into action with my trusty knife, and I cut the head off the rubber toilet plunger from the bathroom, and I used that rubber piece as my heel pad.
That's pretty inventive.
It worked quite well. I felt proud of myself for the creative efforts. And the next day I cab out to the airport, and I go clomping through customs, and I was a little nervous, but people were very sympathetic that my school vacation was interrupted by this unfortunate accident, which is what I told anybody who would ask. And I'm feeling pretty good till the young customs guy kind of casually asks me for the note from my the doctor's note from my cast.
Boy, who carries that around though?
That's what I said. The doctor's note from my cast. Time slowed down. You know those moments like
the cold sweat.
The doctor's note. I told him I broke it down in Izmir, down south, and I lost the doctor's note. Do I have to go all the way back to Izmir and get another note? And he thinks about it, and he looks me over, and he looks at the line, and I give him the grin, and he waves me through. The stewardess on the plane was even so kind as to rearrange my seat so I could stretch out my hash-filled cast.
It's a great idea, but didn't the cast start to break up a little bit?
Yeah, there's more to the story. I get to New York Customs, and I'm clomping through, and I'm trying to keep the bag from banging into my cast, and somebody actually helps me lift the bag up onto the thing, and the customs guy's going through the bag. I look up at the glassed-in visitors gallery in New York, and there's the three guys who financed my trip, Bone and my other friends, Mark and Archie, and they're jumping up and down, screaming and laughing, which freaks me the fuck out. And I look down, and that's when I realized that my cast seems to be crumbling around my heel pad because I'm leaving this trail of white flakes behind me.
And that now you're in America.
Now in America, now I'm really freaked out. And the customs guy stamps my passport and waves me through. And I follow my friends who are leading me now, at a distance. They don't want to be seen with me quite yet, out through the parking lot. And we jump in the car, and I break the fucking cast off because it's so tight. We stick a chunk of that hash in the pipe and head into the hat.
Right away.
Of course, right away. We made it. Not quite the flawless planning I would have liked, but, I make it back from the mysterious East.
Right.
And I reap the rewards.
And then you become, the hubris grows, and you're invincible now. You can do it over
all
and
my
over.
Friends love me, and I make a bunch of money. And
so what'd you pay for it, and what'd you sell it for?
I paid $150 for each kilo, $300 for 2 kilos, and I sold it and made about $5,000.
Wow.
Which back then, in 1969, footloose, fancy free, it was a lot of money. I got the cash in one pocket, I got the hash in the other pocket, I got a motorcycle under me. Life was sweet. I spent the summer in Europe riding motorcycles. I lived in Spain. I ran with the bulls in Pamplona.
So you lived.
I was living. I made it into the Spanish newspapers. There's a picture of this
a guy with a cast riding down there.
Rubia, they call him arriba, a la Ezequiel. Above to the left, one sees a Rubio Melonudo, a blonde hippie, which I had the hair back then, diving out of the way. And it's a picture of me diving in midair. And you could see bulls on one side and a guy behind me with this panic look on his face. The bull was right behind him, diving out of the way of this charging bull, which is pretty indicative of where my life was. I'm diving out of the way of a charging bull. I was definitely headed for a fall, and 6 months later, I'm back in Istanbul again.
Right.
I didn't use a cast again. Remembering the crumbling heel pad and the missing doctor's note, I just taped the shit to my skin and pulled on my T-shirt, my jacket, my sweater, and I jumped on the Orient Express, which I had actually taken from Paris to Istanbul because I wanted all the stamps in my passport.
Right,
so it doesn't just read Istanbul, New York, Istanbul, New York.
Right.
So I got all these stamps, and then I taped the shit, and I got on the Orient Express, and I started chugging west out of Istanbul. When I realized my body heat was beginning to make the hash smell something fierce.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because you're covered now, so it's in plastic.
I got it on my skin. Yes, it's in plastic, but still, it's...
And you're talking about for 2 kilos, so what are you talking about, like waist to the top of your body pretty much?
Under my arms, around, and all around my waist, and I had a couple of plaques in each boot.
Wow, so you had it everywhere pretty much. Yeah. And then that
was the second trip, and then the third trip by the third trip I came back 6 months later. The third trip I came back. I went to the same cabbie. I had the shit. I didn't tape it to my skin. I taped it to my T-shirt, and then I pulled on my sweater, my jacket. I got all the stamps in my passport, so I just walked straight onto the fucking plane. So bold, so sure, so dumb, so dumb.
But it worked.
It worked. Of course it worked. That's why I knew I could do it again, which I did on the fourth trip and the last trip in October of 1970.
Right. So let's go to October 7th.
The PLO, a month before I got busted, the PLO blew up the jets and hijacked them in the desert. And this is the start of what you guys know, security at the airport. They didn't have it before that. Nobody bothered you. But I knew that the jets had got blown. So the day before I'm scheduled to fly out, I'm out to the airport, dark shades, the hat pulled low, so cool and casual, watching people going through customs for the daily Pan Am flight number 1, nonstop, Istanbul to New York. And they got no metal detectors, and nobody's being body searched. And it's like... piece of cake.
Right, so you always, every single time you did survey the situation.
I'm no fool. Right. I went out and looked. What I didn't do is actually watch people go through customs to get on the plane, because I was heading back to Istanbul to hook up with this English girl who was studying belly dancing here in exotic Istanbul, and she can't wait every day to show me her latest move. So, like, instead of watching people, because if I had, once again, my dick leading me astray, if I'd watch people, I'd see there, which I found out the next day, I breezed through customs with the normal 2 kilos under my arms. And then they keep us in a downstairs room, which seems a little odd, but no problem. James Bond is through customs. He's feeling fine. And then puts on a bus out to the plane, which is still fine. And then the bus stops, and a door opens, and a Turkish cop gets on, and he says, women and children stay on the bus. Men, exit by the rear door. And I look out the window at Turkish soldiers surrounding the plane with guns and a big brown table set up in front of the boarding ramp with 2 cops on each side where they're going to be frisking people getting on the plane. This was the security.
Jesus Christ. Were you ever on did you ever have to ride a bus beforehand?
No.
So this is the first one.
It was a little odd.
So when you first got on the bus, were you like, what's this all about? Or did
I just figured I'm through customs. It's fine. In fact, I'm having to deal with this little old lady from Chicago was telling me about her son in the Air Force and blah, 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 blah. And that's why I wasn't really paying attention until the bus stopped and the door opened and the cop was there. I still hadn't even looked. And now when I look out the window, I see they had soldiers out there with guns, and they boarded up the plane. That's each plane. They search people at the place.
Wow.
And they have the men exit by the rear door. There was nowhere to go, and I couldn't unstrap this 4 pounds of hash, so all I could do was try to balls it out and bluff my way on the plane, and I kind of like a bunch of men in the circling around, and I kind of like slide past the first cop.
And these people are searching everybody like top to bottom?
Lining us all up, and we're all funneling down, and they're searching. But I kind of like slid past the first guy, and then I kind of like sidle up past the second guy, and I have my shoulder pack, and I'm putting books and Frisbee and shit back in like I'd just been searched, and I say, yeah, he searched me, and I actually get 1 foot up in the air to the boarding ramp when this hand grabs my elbow. It sounds so ridiculous, but I mean, there really are those dramatic moments when you know your life hangs in the balance. I knew it then. The first cop just happened to finish with somebody, and he turns and he catches my guy's eye and he nods and he says, "You search this guy?" And he shakes his head no, and now the hand on my arm tightens because this guy realizes I just lied to him. So he takes me aside and he has me put my hands up in the air, and he starts to search me, and he hits these hard plaques on my arms, and he keeps going, and he hits the hard plaques around my waist, and he keeps going down my legs towards my boots. I found myself praying, a Catholic who left the church at about the age of reason and puberty, please Jesus, get me out of here, I will never do this shit again.
Because it's all you got at that point.
That's all I got. But this time he comes up and he hits the hard plaques under my arms, and he freezes. And I see his eyes widen, and my heart stops. And then he freaks out and jumps back, pulls out a gun, and starts screaming, "Bomba, bomba!" And all the soldiers are putting their rifles out. All the people are screaming onto the ground. It's like, I'm standing there with my arms in the air waiting to be shot.
So they think you have a bomb.
That's it. They're out there looking for it. He puts the shaky gun. I mean, it's shaking like this in my stomach, and he lifts up my sweater, and it takes him a moment to realize that it's not some mad bomb or wild explosives. It's just some idiot out here smuggling hash. I can see the tension going. He says, "Hashish, hashish," and all the tension goes out of his face. And he's all relaxed. He puts his gun down. The soldier put their guns down. Everybody starts standing up. Everybody's relieved. Except
you, yeah.
Because it's the beginning of a very long 5 years, man.
Wow. So before we go any further, I don't want to be a Billy hog. So if you guys have any questions, just jump in and interrupt me at any point.
And I'm babbling away here, so please stop me when you're.
I don't think you realize.
Or steer me.
You've probably told it enough. I don't think you realize how riveting.
A gazillion fucking times, ad nauseum. I've told them. My wife can tell it. You want a story? Ask my wife. She's been with 33 years. She can tell these stories now. But you know what? It's bizarre for me because the first time I answered the questions, they were true, and they were emotionally connected. So the 1,000th time I asked the same question, it still is true. And it's weird because it's so emotionally connected. You know, I'm an actor anyway, and I live on my emotions. But all of this shit, it's like, it's right there. I'm 66. This shit happened when I was 23. And emotionally,
you still go back every time you tell
all the time. Every time.
Well, I appreciate you going through this with us. Well, so now you're...
Wait, no, but...
You got something else?
But, it's just that, no, I appreciate being able to do it because I like it. It's who I am. It's become, such a big part of my life, and especially now to promote a book, you got to get out there promoting. When I had the first book, I had E.P. Dutton promoted, did Midnight Express. All I had to do was show up. They set everything up everywhere I go. Now, you don't have a publisher, but they also took all the money. Now we publish on our own, but you got to go out and promote it. So no, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, sure. And we're gonna put the link on riotcast.com, and we're gonna put the link on our page, riotcast.com, just the glory hole. Yes, set that up. And
I don't even know what a podcast is, by the way. I can barely open my emails. I'm hanging onto the digital age, but by my fingernails, I hear them cracking. I need a teenager. Every time something goes wrong, I get the teenager from next door to come over and fix shit. He doesn't even explain anymore now. He used to try and explain it, and he realizes, Now he just comes in. What's wrong? What'd you do? Fixes it all up. He says, okay, don't do that again. It's like, okay. And off he goes till I call him again.
Yeah, well, look, a podcast this is pretty much what radio is becoming now. You know, it's almost like you mentioned the book publishing.
Yeah.
It's no different than that. Like now, you know, we have a network. We have 13 shows, 12 shows. We have more coming, and it was self-made. And now, you know, we have hundreds of thousands of listeners that listen to our network, and it just keeps growing. So it's very similar.
I like it because it diffuses the power and the ability to connect and influence people into a lot of different hands as opposed to a conglomerate-y few.
Right, and you have the ability to say and do whatever you want.
And you can say shit, which is so nice.
Right.
It's so hard for me to talk on all those shows and not say the words that everybody says. I mean, the hypocrisy of the FCC and all that bullshit is like,
I know.
It's like pot laws. I mean, please, don't get me started on
marijuana. We've talked about that a million
Jesus
times.
Christ.
And hopefully in New York they get it, because I know you're in LA now and you get to have pretty much
It's legal
else.
now. I'm legal now. I got my medical marijuana certificate. Yeah, except that the federal government is still illegal. It's still a classified, you know, number one. Pot is in the same classification as these other things, and it's heavy-duty time. Yeah. While we're talking about legalization, there's kids in jail doing really fucking hard time while we're talking. And I can relate to those guys. And, you know, all this talk, I watch Bill Maher. He's such an advocate of getting this out there, and where everybody knows it's an idea whose time has come. Colorado and Washington, it's legal there, but the federal government could still close it down, and people are still getting busted all the time. It's an easy target for the police, potheads. Who would you rather bust? Let's get some of those potheads. Let's keep their weed while we got it and throw those assholes in jail.
Instead of a killer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't want to deal with some bad guys.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back to, all right, so you get caught.
Right.
Where do they take you? What happens next? Like right after they catch you, where do you go? You
go a little room at the airport where it's full of cops and soldiers, and they rip all of the hash off my body, off my chest and around my waist, and they pile it all up out front, and couple of three cops up there, and the one head cop asked me my name. He's got my passport in front of him. I go, William Hayes. He writes, William Hayes. And then the door opens, and another cop in more stripes comes in, and he moves this guy, moves that guy, like musical chairs. And then the new guy says, name. William Hayes, William Hayes. 2 or 3 more times. More guys with more stripes, and guys keep doing musical chairs up front because they're coming in to share the prize. And then they bring in this photographer with this old tripod camera and the big black thing over his head, and they line me up, and all the guys on both sides of me, they pile all the hash in my arms, and all the cops are fixing their ties and like slicking down their hair, fixing their... It's like, it's so surreal. I have to laugh. Yeah. Which brings the photographer out from under his hood, and he says something in Turkish, which must mean, why is this asshole smiling? So the cop on my right just casually, nonchalantly backhands me to the nuts. Bang! Down onto the floor, and I drop all the hash, and then they lift me up and pile it up, and apparently I have the correct look on my face now.
Just so because
they snapped the picture. Because I was smiling. They snapped the picture. The picture's like...
Yeah.
And then they did that for a while, and actually I was in there almost an hour. I'm waiting for the next seat shift up front when I realized I still got hash in both my boots.
Oh, that's right.
I raise my hand like in school. Can I permission? And I lift up one boot, bang, 3 plaques come out. Allah! A shout comes up on the shore, bang, 3 more plaques. Allah! The head cop turns and slaps this guy, who turns and slaps, like a Three Stooges routine. Everybody slaps each other, and then they strip me down and really search me, which is not fun.
So full cavity search?
Oh, yeah. You don't want to get really searched. It's not fun at all. And I'm just getting my clothes back on when this guy enters, Tex. He never tells me his name. I figure he's DEA.
Right.
All I know is he's American. He speaks English, and
you think America, maybe they'll save you.
I don't know. I've just been strip search, cavity search with all of these fucking guys to get me out of this room. So he takes me out and he puts me in his little car, and he's standing up front doing a whatever with the Turks, and he's signing some papers, and I'm in the car, and I realize I don't have any handcuffs on. The door's not locked, and I'm thinking, we'll drive, we'll get by the sea, I'll open the door, I'll roll out, swim away. I've gone from James Bond to Steve McQueen, The Great Escape, and I hear the door, and I turn my head, and there's a pistol pressed up against my temple, and Tex says, oh, William, you seem like a nice enough kid, but if you try to escape, I'll blow your fucking brains out.
Wow.
Which I believe him. Me and Steve, we put off any thoughts of escape until later. much later, as it turns out.
So, all right, so do you like try to try to appeal to this American
what he
DA
did?
guy? Or
No.
He was no nicer.
Once the pistol hit my temple, I knew there's not much appeal going on here. Because this guy would have shot me if I tried to jump. What he told me was, he said, it's tough because the Turkish drug laws have really been increased now that Richard asshole Nixon has started the war on drugs, and he pressured all these foreign countries to increase their drug laws with the threat of rescinding American aid, which they all got. And then he mentioned how hard this is going to be on my parents, which, my folks, I've been trying to keep this thought out of my mind and just get through the next moment by moment, but that's right there, and it terrifies me. And as it turns out, I mean, from the outside, people think the worst part of jail is like the dirt or the violence and shit. I can handle all that. The hardest part of jail for me was the realization that my actions had consequences. Sounds pretty simple, but I never thought about it because I never considered the consequences. I was just running so full speed straight ahead. The consequences of my action is not only have I fucked up my own life, got myself in jail, but now all the people who love me are suffering with me.
Right.
Every night, my mom goes to sleep with pain in her heart. I can't even say it now, 40 fucking years later. That's the hard part. Right. That killed me. And that didn't go away. Like, every day, she's suffering because of what I did.
Yeah.
Whew, that's the hard part for me.
And this is obviously the day where there's no, there's no internet, there's no fast information. One of the things I got from letters when reading them is that there's such a delay from when you send the letter to, so it's almost like, and we'll get into the letters more.
But that gap was difficult to deal with because you'd write a letter home and it would take 2 weeks before you get a letter back. And so you never know which piece of information has been, especially because, well, throughout letters, I write to my folks and my friends and my girlfriend. Well, the letters to my folks were more like informative, and here's what's happening, and here's what's on with the court, and the socks arrived, and I could use, a new book, and my friends, I kind of wrote for my spirit, and and it's interesting to read, for me at least, the early bravado and shit that still is there. The idiot that got himself busted is still there for the first year or so, and you hear it in the letters of my friends.
Right.
And then the letters to my girlfriend, which is my touch of femininity in this cold, masculine world. And she was like a world traveler, and I used to hear her letters where she'd race dog sleds in Alaska and climb in the mountains in Tibet, and I would climb with her. I'd hear her letters, and she sort of saved me. And I could write out to her when things got real heavy. I can't write to my folks. They're already carrying all the weight. So I'd write to her. And she was my salvation in many ways. Because
one of the things you get from the letters to your parents, is that you're almost sugarcoating the experience.
Yes.
Yeah, like you talk more about, in the letters to your parents, you talk more about, we get to roam around, the sun feels nice.
Well, on the island, yeah.
Right. Or even
in the prison. I never lie to people, but I can be very discreet and very selective. I'm a poker player. I can be very selective. And what I told them was always the truth and not everything, and I tried to tell them what they needed to hear. I mean, they're no fools. They know what's going on. So I tried to give them the best parts of prison. And of course, strangely enough, there were a lot of good parts of prison. There's things that I learned in jail that are so valuable that to this day, I would trade the 5 years for what I learned in there.
Wow, really?
Well, I shouldn't say that. God damn it. If I had the choice, I could learn that shit somewhere else. I kept thinking every year, after the first year, I'm thinking, well, now I've learned some lesson and I've learned my karmic and it's time to go. And then another year goes by. Well, now it's time to go. And then a third year, fourth year.
Because it does seem like, through letters also, and not just the ones to your parents, you were actually taking it very well in stride in the beginning. Like you could see and that's all because of how they fuck with your sentence. Actually, we should really keep this in a timeline. So let's if you can. Let's go.
Originally, I was sentenced. You go to court, I went to court, I think, 14 times in the first year. They chain you up, then they put you. I hate chains. I've had handcuffs. I've had chains. I hate chains. They chain you up. They take you to court. You spend all day in the basement with this smoky room. You go up in the court, 2 minutes of proceedings in Turkish. You don't know what's happening, and they're chaining you up, dragging you off while the American counsel tries to explain that nothing happened. We'll see you next month. Right. And eventually, I got a 4-year and 2-month sentence, which even with time off for good behavior, still left me like more than 2 years of prison, which is why I kept trying to escape. I had various weird prison ways of trying to get out.
Right, and trying to figure that out. But all right, so if we can, before that, let's go back to first night. Because that to me, that to me's got to be probably one of the worst, if not the worst. Yeah. So you're in the car, and then did they take you straight to the prison? Is the next?
They actually took me to the Sirkaji lockup, which is sort of the place you go before you go to the big prison, and I talked with some cops there, and they had the kilos of hash, and they brought me upstairs to this one room where the head cop is this slick-looking guy, and he speaks terrific English, and there's another Turkish guy in there with an expensive suit who doesn't seem too concerned. He's a prisoner. Doesn't seem real concerned, and the cop says 60 kilos, and he points to these 60 kilos of hash, which is Tuff's stuff, and then Tuff kind of nods modestly, like, and then they drop my little 2 puny kilos down next to him. They both kind of laugh. Look at this tourist. He's got 2 kilos. And the cop wants to know, where'd you get the hash from? And I tell him, the first thing is Tuff says something in Turkish, and the cop says, he wants to know if you're scared. Scared? No, I'm not scared. Obviously, I'm fucking terrified. Both of them they both laugh out loud, like, yeah, sure, you're not scared. And then the cop wants to know, where'd you get the hash? And I tell him some bullshit story about a couple of hippie Turks out in front of the pudding shop. He says, if we take you back to the pudding shop and you show us who sold you the hash, you'll be on the next Pan Am jet to New York.
Which is bullshit, of course.
Of course it's bullshit. But, I want to appear cooperative because as I was walking in, I look up and there's this crying, bleeding prisoner being questioned on the stairs by a couple of cops. So I want to appear cooperative.
Right.
Besides, it might be a champ. I'm not going to give up the cabbie. I tell him that this hippie Turk says, the cabbie, I'm drinking tea with his wife and his kids. How can I turn him in? What I was really looking for, they took me back to the pudding shop.
So they did take
They said, I said, yeah, I'll take me back to the pudding shop. I'm thinking, Steve McQueen, might be a chance to escape. So they walk me, they got 4 cops around me. They plainclothes cops, like pit bulls, all around me, walking down the street nonchalantly. Freaks are jumping off the sidewalk a block ahead of us. Everybody knows these are like 4 plainclothes cops, and I'm walking. So I sit down in the pudding shop, and my guys are like, sitting around. And then I order some tea. And I order some eggs. I have a little rice pudding. I figure it might be my last real meal for a while. And supposedly I'm looking for the hippie Turks. What I'm hoping is Tunjai, that asshole with the curled up mustache who ripped me off my first night.
Shows up,
I'm hoping he walked. I would give him up in a New York fucking minute. But, and I'm also looking for ways to escape, which are slim to none with my guys around. And after about an hour, they get tired. They scoop me up and they bring me back to Sirkaji, where I'm going to be locked down for the night.
Right.
Now I'm scared. This big heavy wooden door gets open. They shove me in, and this door slams shut, and I'm in this kind of dim, echoey room full of milling men, and I am, I'm ready for anything. I really wish I kept up my martial arts even more. And a couple of kind of semi-filthy guys start moving towards me out of the darkness, and I hear a growl, and I look over, and it's Tuff, the Turk who I'd met upstairs in the captain's office, sitting on a circle of guys on a blanket with a big feast of chicken and grapes and fruit and stuff, and he's waving me over, and I get a distinct whiff of hash. They're smoking a joint. I'm in the police station. I just been busted for hash, and they're smoking a joint, which he passes to me, which I take a fucking hit of. Why the fuck not? It's like,
no shit.
It was good hash. And I spend the first night in jail.
You still remember that.
Curled up on the floor, and the filthy floor next to Tuff and his friends over here, which keeps the rest of the slithery nightcrawler guys away, waiting for the sun and wondering what tomorrow will bring, because today's been very interesting. So that was my first night. And in the morning, they call out my name. First off, I have to piss, which I do, in the exposed, open, slimy hole in the ground, which is the toilet. And then they call out my name, and I go upstairs, and a guy from the American Council is there, and he talks to me about some legal stuff, not encouraging, give me a list of lawyers, and he gives me a piece of pencil and paper, and I have a chance to write a letter home to my folks, which is still, to this day, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
And that's the first letter in the book.
That's the first letter in the book. Actually, the first letter in the book is that one, and the last letter is the letter to my dad, written 2 days before I actually escape off the island.
Right, yeah.
So it kind of bookends all of it. That was a hard letter to write. And then later on, after they take me out to they chain me up and they take me out to the prison with a little intermediate stop. I don't know how much time you got. I mean,
if you have the time,
I'll talk forever. I mean, we're here. This is what we're doing. You wonder if you stop me if you're near. They actually stop me. They take me from the prison and they put us in the van, and it's a red prison van with these wooden benches and little slits, and they chain us all up and they take us across town and stop in this weird little place like an underground room and unchain us and line us all up in an underground room with a bunch of soldiers and this kind of burly-looking sergeant with a clipboard with all the information, names, and starts talking to the prisoners, asking them questions and slapping them around. Asana sicka jumps, and then moving to the next guy, sicka them, bang, and hitting him, banging him, and calling out stuff, kicking him on the ground as he's getting angrier and angrier as he's moving down the line in my direction. Jeez. And he gets to me, and he reaches into my shoulder pack, which for some reason I still have with me, and he reaches and he pulls out these 2 little yellow balls, and he sticks them in my face. Nebu, like, what is this? Right. And I cautiously ask him for the balls, and I slowly reach in the bag. I take out a third one, and I have him step back, and I launch these balls up. A little juggling weave that I had learned from Bone, my friend who had the hash. He taught me how to juggle. I'm doing this juggle weave, which, the soldiers freak out, which freaked me. I grab the balls, and he yells. He says, yop, yop. I guess it means juggle. So I'm yopping. I'm juggling. Anytime the balls fall down, he yells, and the soldier brings it back, and I keep juggling and juggling. My arms are getting tired, but while I'm juggling, I'm not getting beaten like everybody else. Yeah. I even get real clever. At one point, I hold them up to the light because they're fluorescent. They glow in the dark. I haven't turned out the lights, and I'm juggling these glowing balls in the darkness, and then it's time to go, and I get chained up now to a grizzled old man, the only other guy other than me who's not all like bloody and beaten. Right. And they put us in the van, and they start to head towards the prison, and this weird lighthearted feeling comes over me, and like the way me and my little yellow balls just clevered our way out of this nasty situation. Right. But that soon fades, and I look out the slats in the thing, and I see these big gray, huge towering walls topped off by barbed wire, and that's Smuggling prison. Actually, they called it Bayram Pasha, then they changed the name, but it's just a section of Istanbul. They call it Smuggling or Bayram Pasha, both of which are sections of Istanbul. Cezaevi in Turkish. Cezaevi in Turkish translates as House of Pain, which is what it is. It's actually weird because I haven't spent any time in an American prison, but I've seen enough shows and shit on TV, and I have friends, unfortunately, who've talked to me. I think I'm glad I was busted there, not here, because here, this whole regimented, you wake at 7, you piss at 7:05, you eat at 7:15, all that shit would drive me fucking crazy, and all that rehabilitation stuff that they try and do here. There, they don't care. It's Cezaevi. It's House of Pain. They put you in, they close the door, bang.
And that's it.
Whatever
happens.
Well, yeah, you learn your way. Here's the way things are supposed to be, and here's the way things really are. You have to bridge that gap very quickly because you don't want to be in between. But it's pretty much, you make your own way inside, and it's a lot of improv, and it's
juggling.
Yeah, it's a lot of juggling. Metaphorically speaking, there's a lot of juggling coming down, and you make your way. If you're a victim on the outside, you'll be a victim on the inside. If you're not, you're not. But you're constantly getting tested in various ways.
All right. So speaking of tested, the blanket.
Ooh, yeah.
Was that day one?
Day one. They brought me in, and they shaved my head and did all this fingerprinting, and I hate that fucking ink on my hands, and then they walked me down. The prison's like a little, a big triple-legged T with administration across the top and 3 long legs, double-tiered cell blocks, and little individual courtyards in between. And they walked me down past a bunch of gray doors, shaven head, and they stop at one gray door and they slide it open, and then they slam the door behind. Clang! I hate that sound behind me. And I'm in my new home, and I look down. It's this long, narrow length of corridor, barred windows on the left, and darkened courtyard, and about 15 or 20 little cells. I'm closing my eyes because I can see it. There's a whole set of stone stairs going upstairs, and there's a little stone kitchen here near the door with like a cement sink and a little stove, bottle stove or something, and a couple of guys come out and introduce. It's like Israeli and German and Swedish, and it's a foreigner cell block with a couple of Turks mixed in, but mostly all the foreigners there. And they take me in a little cell somewhere, and they give me some soup, and they talk to me about my situation, which doesn't sound encouraging. They actually have me sit on a metal can because they assure me that where I've been, I've got lice. As I discovered, you get a lot of lice in jail, and which is why when the hot water comes on in the big sink by the kitchen there, which apparently it does for an hour a day, 1 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 it does come on, and I'm there in the kitchen scooping water out of the sink with a pitcher, which is how I bathed for 5 years. I'm pouring it over my head, and I'm naked, and I got suds all over me. The Israeli guy comes running and he says, no, you can't. You have to wash in your underwear. You can't be naked in prison. It's like, what? I'm bathing in my... And the next thing I know, people are yelling, Saim, Saim, which means count. And the doors open, and the guards are coming in for the count, and I'm lined up in front of the cells with the rest of the guys in a borrowed sweatshirt and a towel around me, dripping on the floor while they do the first count. I never did quite get clean, and then this weaselly little Amin, he's a Turkish weasel, we call him. He's like the emissary of the block. What would be the... I know Turkish words. What's the English word? He's like trustee or something of the block. And he takes me to this little cell down the end, the empty bare cell, and he has me come in, and he's fumbling around with this big key ring, and he's trying to find the right key to lock my door. And I ask him, there's nothing, just this bare... The cell's about 12 feet long with a little hole in the back on the floor for a toilet. You always have to keep a heavy can or a rock over it to keep the rats from coming up at night, but they do anyway. And it's about this wide across, just beyond my hands, this little metal frame bunk. And the bunk, it's got nothing on. There's no blanket in it. I say, it's cold, blanket. He says, yeah, tomorrow. And he's trying to find the right key to the cell, and he just like gives up. And I don't think he's really locked my cell. And I hear him clang, and he's going off. And then I hear, psst, and the cell doors open. I open up, and there's a big German guy in the next cell who gives me a stick with a nail on the end, and he says, blankets down the end, last cell. So I get down there, and I take these 2 blankets, and I give him back a stick and the blanket, and I take mine, I close the door, and I curl up on the bed in this blanket, and I just collapse into sleep, because I had not slept at all the other night before. And I collapse, and then almost like instantly, bang, I hear the cell open, and then somebody's grabbing the blanket, and it's Amin, and he's in here yelling and screaming and banging the blanket. And again, I'm not real big, but I used to be very fast, and I'm scared shitless. I nail him in the face, and bang, he goes down, and his nose is spouting blood, and he's screaming and yelling, and then guards are rushing in, they're dragging me out, and I'm trying to explain to them, he hit me first, I was sleeping. All they know is I don't speak Turkish, but they don't speak English, but whatever, you're trying something. Right. All I know is new guy in a fight, first night, lesson needs to be taught. And how they do that in Turkey, like many Middle Eastern countries, is a form of punishment called falaka, where they tie your feet up with a stick and they beat your feet with a stick, which they did. They beat my feet and they hit my hands, and I thought they were killing me. Turns out it was not a bad beating at all. They didn't even break any bones. That's the line demarcation. If they break bones, that's a bad beating. If they break bones and come back and beat you again the next day, that's a real bad beating. They didn't break bones.
So they didn't, because when you, obviously in the movie, when you see that, like that is one of the most painful things to watch.
That stick in the movie was too big and thick. One hit would break bone. It was thinner. It was much more like a bastonado kind of stick where hurt like a motherfucker, and if they do it hard enough, it breaks your bones. But they were teaching me a lesson, and it was a very good lesson about fighting in jail, which is don't fight in jail. Friends in jail are like, you don't fuck with me, I don't fuck with you, we're friends. But if you get in a fight, if you and I are in a fight, and the guards come in and you're all bloody, they beat me equally bloody. If I'm all bloody, they beat you equally bloody. It's kind of discourage you from fighting in jail, which is the point.
Discourage you from winning, that's for sure.
Oh no, you got to win and then get away. You just can't be around, because then they find out. But either way, but the strange thing for me was it was very fortuitous, because this guy, Amin, he walked around the prison with this big black eye and this big bloody nose, and everybody knew it was the new prisoner, Willie, who got in the fight, which...
So nobody wants to fuck with you. To a point.
It helped the reputation, because if they're looking for somebody to fuck with, like, they'll find somebody easier. Right. And, Ziad, his nose is all blown up and shit, which, again, it was good for me. It kind of gave me a little bit of a cred in the jail. Don't mess with me.
Right.
So... Again, it's attitude, though. Everything is attitude.
Yeah. So it doesn't actually break the bones in your feet.
No,
but it hurts I would imagine.
It hurt like a motherfucker.
Long time
yes, and my hands, because I was doing this and it hit my hands. But again, it was probably worth it, because it helped me out. Right. I didn't have to get in too many fights in jail. When you do, you want to get in. You want to do real bad damage, and that eyes, throat, or balls. Yeah. If we're about to have a fight, there's always a moment just before it happens, which is the moment that whoever does the first striking, starting the fight. No, the fight started, but the first hit, if I hit you in the eyes, the throat, or the balls, and the fight's not over, I'm in really big trouble now.
Right. Yeah. You gotta go.
Really big trouble. That is like run, but there's nowhere to run in jail. That's the problem in jail. You can't get away from people. The hard part of prison, many of them, is Sartre talks about hell being other people. You can't get away from people. They're always there, all the time, 24/7, awake, aware, watching, waiting. Right. Somebody's always watching stuff. You're always lonely. You're never alone. Drive me fucking batty.
I can imagine. And you mentioned in the letters also there is a mention that 3 Turks tried to rape you pretty early on.
That was a first night when it was a quarantine. I don't even think I put the quarantine in the first book. I think we even took it out. But there's a quarantine place where they keep you for the first night before you get brought back to the second place. And the 3 guys in there, they had designs. 3 people, I don't care how bad you are. You got to be Bruce Lee to fight off 3 guys. But Tough was brought in there too, the Turk from the place, and Tough had this fucking shiv with him. Aside from smoking joints at the police, he had this big fucking shiv with him. And at one point, he just pulled out this shiv, and it was like, you fuck with him, you fuck with me. It's like, all right, we'll let him be.
That's good.
Which is
it's
also
good to find a friend like that early on.
Well, it's a very good lesson for me about jail, which is you make friends with the baddest guy in the jail. Okay. You hit him in the throat, the eyes, or the nuts, which means everybody else leaves you alone, but then you got to deal with him, or you make friends. I'm good at making friends.
Yeah, right.
I was the class clown. I was always in the back. I was always instigating. That's how I get by, is humor. Right. Well, it works good in jail, too. Better to make friends with people, make them laugh, or at least keep them chill, as opposed to dealing with them. Because guys who come in looking to deal with people, you're going to have a really tough time.
Yeah, I'm sure there are people that walk in and they think they're just going to be as tough as they possibly can.
And maybe they are, but they're having to deal with that all the time.
And you've seen it, I'm sure.
All the time. And there's plenty of crazy guys. So if you're looking to fuck with somebody, there's plenty of guys who'll do that with you. I'm always zenning them. I'm chilling them out. Again, I'm too smart for the tough guys. Right. And I'm too tough for the smart guys. People leave me alone.
Yeah, it's a nice
I'm from the Bronx. I remember reading, what's his name? Al Pacino. Somebody said, Al, why don't you have bodyguards? He says, I don't need bodyguards. I'm from the Bronx.
Good point.
Whatever.
Well, okay, so now, so a lot of the things that I got from letters, too, is that you had almost you were always hoping for amnesty. Your initial sentence was 4 years.
Right.
And maybe it's part of the sugarcoating that I talked about in the letters, where you really were in the first. You were coming to terms with the fact that you were there, and even though you had thought of escaping, I think you used sports metaphors in the letters about escaping and
Willie Mays leaning off third base and all that stuff. My dad and I used to do that.
Right, so sports metaphors. So at least you were kind of communicating, and your father was trying to tell you, don't do that shit. You only got a couple of years,
which is smart advice all around.
Of course,
But again, 2 years for me, two more years when I finally got the sentence. The first sentence seemed like forever, so I attempted some escape attempts. But again, there's a huge, vast abyss of pain and fear between talking about escaping and actually trying it.
Fuck yeah.
Because if you get caught, there's... One of the things about being a foreigner, an American especially, that I think mitigated some of the problems you might have is that they know they have to deal with the American council. So my first night, the beating, if they beat me really bad and or raped me, they have to answer. Eventually, the council's going to come.
Right.
So they know that. They've learned about foreigners, which helped in a way. It helped things. Not inside where you got to deal with people on your own, but for the guards, officialdom, they have to be a little. So the beating that they gave, yes, he got in a fight, da-da-da-da. Yeah. That helped in a way. So it made it a little bit easier.
Right. And then so you're doing your time, you're going through the years, you're coming to terms with it, you're dealing with it.
Right.
And then with 54 days left in your sentence, what happens?
Actually, before that, I went to the madhouse to try and do an escape attempt.
Oh, that was beforehand.
That was beforehand.
Yeah, let's do the madhouse.
I learned that there's an article in the Turkish constitution that says if you're judged to be crazy, they can't keep you in jail. But if you're that crazy, they don't let you out on the street. They keep you in the madhouse. This is Section 13 for the criminally insane, which is part of Bakıköy Mental Hospital. It's a huge park grounds. So when I heard about that, I thought, this is perfect for me. I was talking to the court about all these mental problems I had from first day. I asked for bail because I'd heard early on that if the court grants you bail, they expect you to split. So I wanted my lawyers from day one, ask for bail. And they never would for some reason. One day I just reached up and had through the translator. I had him ask for bail so I could go out into Istanbul so I could deal with the mental problems that are really beginning to overwhelm me here in prison. And the judges all looked at each other and laughed and just moved the court right along. But I kept on that mental shit. And I actually submitted at one point, I wanted to go to Bakıköy for observation for a crazy report, which is, again, it's a legal term. You can be judged to be legally crazy.
And you acted it out, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, I thought all my friends would think, no problem for you to get a crazy report. And then I get to Bakikoi, and I see the competition. It's like, holy shit. One of the nice things about Midnight Express in the movie, a lot of changes. Some things were accurate. The bust at the airport with the plane was pretty accurate. The madhouse, which everybody said they just made that up. No, that was actually quite accurate.
So people were just walking around this pole?
Oh, that's the wheel. This is Section 13 for the criminally insane. It used to be a barracks for the Sultan's Janissary troops back during the Ottoman Empire. Now they turned it into its huge park grounds, and this is one of many, many, many aging structures. And it's got a wall around it and rusty barbed wire, and all the people in there are there because they are criminally insane. I show up. It looks like that Boris Karloff movie Bedlam, where the inmates brick them up alive in the wall. That's what I felt like. I mean, no semblance of a hospital, just this crumbling bin full of filthy, dirty men, some stark naked, others wandering around in these sheets, and guys, all this weird moaning and singing, and one guy's crouched up against the wall, and he's rubbing with this walnut on his head that's bleeding, and there's another guy like a judge, and he's making pronouncements, and people are jumping from bed to bed and chasing each other with test pieces. Like, holy shit, what did I get myself into? And I got to compete with these guys. I spent about 2 weeks there. I ended up talking to the doctors who came. I actually at one point, I took off these little, they bring you in, they took us down in the room in the end, and they hose us down and powder us down and get these little fucking shorty pajamas. I took off my clothes. I sat naked out in the dirt. I shit on the ground.
Gee,
nobody seemed to notice.
Nobody seemed to give a shit.
Except people who notice for the wrong reasons. It's like nobody was there to notice. The doctors don't care. These the Bakaji, the people who take care of you. Only from the outside, a couple of hot doctors came, and they're all like medium young, and one woman and a couple of guys, and they all speak good English, and they're asking me these questions, and I'm telling them all these crazy stories, and I can't think, and I can't remember my mother's name, and why are you writing all this down? Stop writing this shit down. And they asked me. I realized afterwards, it didn't matter what I said. They asked me a question, I answer. No matter what I answer or how I say it, they asked me a question, I answer. How fucking crazy can I be? Okay. If I'd leapt across the table and chewed off the doctor's ear, that might have gotten their attention. Maybe. So I spent about 2 weeks there, and
but that was almost worse in a way, right? Like, did you want out of there more so than the
No, I wanted a crazy report so that I would be kept there, because that was an easier place to escape from than Bakiko, than Samajala.
Because it's always about the escape.
That's all it was. Yeah. Until, I had a friend who was coming to visit me, and I could. There's mortar out of the walls. I could easily climb. I climbed like a squirrel. What I needed was somebody on the outside with a car and false papers and money and clothes. And for that, I needed my oldest friend Norman, who came to visit. Then they bring me back to the prison. I get back to the prison, and I tell all the guys back there, how good it is to be back. And they all look at me like, the fuck? Good to be back here? Once again, perspective. You don't appreciate what you have till you lose it. And after Bakikoi, the prison looked pretty nice to me.
Right. And I could see, like, if you wind up staying there, you could probably wind up going crazy eventually yourself. Like,
it was after a couple of weeks, it was getting weird. Actually, there's one weird little guy with these big googly eyes. One day, they have this wheel down in the basement. Walk in the basement. This is like the bottom of the bird cage. And all these guys, this low-slung ceiling with a central pillar, and around it, all these guys walking, just endlessly walking just around the wheel, just in a circle.
And that's in the movie, too.
That's very accurate, but they all walk in one direction, to the right. All good Turks walk to the right. Right is good, left is bad, left is communist. All good Turks walk to the right. And what do I know? I just move in the circle with them, wandering on all this wheel of broken spokes going around and around. But it's kind of soothing. You get into the rhythm and just shuffling around. There's nothing else to do here anyway. I walked the wheel a lot. In fact, it got to the point where I was beginning to get a little worried because I was spending so much time in the basement walking the wheel. And one day, this weird little guy, Ibrahim, with these big googly red vein eyes, moves in next to me, and he starts talking to me in perfect English how we all come from the factory. And sometimes the factory makes bad machines, but the bad machines don't know they're bad machines. And that's why the factory brings them here. It's like, yeah, leave me the fuck alone.
Time to go.
Every time I turn around, Ibrahim, William, you think you know what you're doing, but you don't. You think you'll get out of here, but you never will. Never. Shut the fuck up. After a while, he was getting to me. He was real. It's like, does he know something I don't know? He said, you think you'll leave, but you won't. You'll always stay here. And I'm thinking, I have made mistakes before. I wonder if this is another one. Man. But I'm thinking, but I don't want to leave. I want to stay here. Well, Jesus, he's right. You'll never leave. I wanted to get that crazy report, but I needed Norman. Anyway, I needed somebody. They brought me back after 2 weeks. They gave me back my clothes and chained me up, brought me back to the prison. And it was like, but I knew with the right bribe to the prison doctor, who I've been bringing cartons of Marlboro cigarettes to constantly.
Right, so that's another thing, I noticed in the letters, you're asking for money from everybody to bribe much everyone.
You need, everything in jail is bakshish, is the bribe system. Everything is a bribe. No matter what you do, it's one cigarette, a carton of cigarettes. I used to have the American Council, when they would come out, bring me cartons of Marlboro, which you get from the Army PX real cheap. They were illegal Marlboros in Turkey. You couldn't bring them in. So I'd get these Marlboros real cheap, and they were high price, and the council would come out. He'd bring 2 cartons of Marlboros. I'd tell him, when you come to the front office, there'll be one of 2 different guards there. The big guy, the one particular Rajeb, make sure you look for Rajeb. He'll say, what have you got? You'll say, oh, I've got these Marlboros. He'll say, it's forbidden, you can't bring them. He'll say, oh, that's right, well, why don't you keep them? So Rajeb will take the 2 cartons of cigarettes, and the council comes in, we have our visit, he leaves. The door opens a half hour later. Rajeb is there, or one of his minions, and I get 1 carton of cigarettes. He keeps the other one. Now, I'm friends with a heavy. Now one of the heavy guards is my buddy, because I bring him Marlboros all the time and other stuff, which is nice, because if something happens in the jail, if a chunk of hash is found on the ground between you and me, and the guards come charging in, and I've been giving them Marlboros every week, and you haven't, guess whose hash it is? Yes, it's your hash. That's right. So, I mean, again, you have to keep keeping yourself like that. But I knew that I could get back to the madhouse by the prison doctor, who I've been bribing constantly for my mental condition, to help deal with my mental condition. I actually showed a letter to the doctors in Bakikoy. We had it submitted to the court, which included my draft physical that I'd gotten back here in the States. This is back Vietnam War days. And I got a draft notice, and I fasted for 2 days, and I ate a chunk of hash the size of my thumb, and I told the Army shrink the absolute fucking truth about everything I thought about life. And after about 20 minutes, he just, stop. And he gave me a 1Y, certified, psychologically unfit to serve in the United States Army. Don't call us, we'll call you. Shit. And I'm still waiting for it. So we submitted that to the court, too, to show I've got this mental problem. So I get back to the prison, and I know I can get back to the madhouse, but what I need is somebody outside. So my friend Norman comes, and we write letters, and he comes to visit, and we talk, and we make plans, and he's going to go back to Mannheim, Germany.
And you could plan it right there, like nobody's listening to you?
You know what? You're talking code. You can talk between the... It's not like... you're watching TV with all of the show. This is Turkey. This is 1970, 1972. One visit, the American Council comes out. You can be in the room with a table. So if people come with him, you'd actually be in a room. But otherwise, you're at that glass that separates you. But nobody's listening, and me and Norman are talking about bullshit. And it's easy to get by, especially when you're using code and slang and talking about running with the bulls and Pamplona stuff. It's time for the pass, and the bull goes under the horns and all that. And me and Norman's a writer too, so we used to talk. Norman he was a poet. He used to walk down the street and spout poetry to women he's never seen before on the street and actually lure them in. He was like the Pied Piper of Poontang. Norman was great. You put him on a leash, you send him in a crowd of women, he'd bring 2 or 3 of them back. He was great. So he comes to visit, and then he's going to go back to Mannheim, Germany. He's got a job in the John Deere tractor factory, working there, making money, getting the false papers that we need. You got to rent the car, do all that stuff. And he writes me, and he tells me things are progressing, and he tells me that he's boffing the wife of some army sergeant from their nearby base. Typical Norman. Women they wouldn't leave him alone. It was a problem he had. So that's all good.
Is that a problem? Really?
Yeah, right. And he's there, and everything's moving along, and after a little while, I got a telegram from my dad saying that Norman was found dead in his hotel room in Mannheim with this big army bayonet through his chest, which probably about the lowest point of my life.
Wow.
Not only have I screwed up my own life, not only my folks suffering, but now my best friend is dead because he was helping me escape. Which
do you think? Why do you think they killed him?
Oh, he was obviously dealing with, he's false papers. He's got to buy a car, bring it to Turkey. He's got to get false passports. He's got to get papers. And Norman, again, he was this Irish poet. For him, this was the Count of Monte Cristo. This was like a big adventure.
Loving it, yeah.
He was never quite as streetwise as he wanted to think he was. He's a great guy, and when he died, my whole world just collapsed. Not only have I killed my best friend, but all my hopes for escape have gone out too, which sort of like helped you get through each day.
Yeah. But it almost makes you almost need to escape now. Because
you know what? It did the opposite to me. What it did was, first off, it fucked me up so much that for months, I didn't even write home to my folks for months. And I was in I don't know where I was, but I was just out somewhere. And
well, you don't want to share that with them. They're going through enough.
No, I certainly couldn't do any of that. I mean, they knew Norman was dead, but I couldn't write. I didn't write to anybody. I'm a writer. I write every day. I still write every fucking day. I didn't write anything. But eventually I sort of got it together, and what I realized was I need to accept this is my karma, this to serve my sentence, to do my time, to serve my sentence, to learn my lesson. And I turned the escape switch off, which has been on from the moment I stood there with my arms in the air getting busted. And that changed everything. Everything changed. I'm seeing prison with totally different eyes.
You just almost want to get through it and get out. So
I was counting days because I had less time left. I got into my yoga I do yoga every day. Luckily I had a BKS Iyengar, Light on Yoga. I had his book in my shoulder bag while I was being arrested. And I've done yoga. I still do it every day for the last 40 years. It keeps me healthy and mostly sane, reasonably sane, at least. So I got really into my yoga, and I'm talking to some guys in jail who kind of knew stuff that I didn't know, and there's guys talking to me about living in the moment, and I never got any of shit. And I'm remembering William James. William James, my name is William James Hayes. So college philosophy, I went to Marquette. College philosophy, William James, the pragmatist, he said, people can alter their lives by altering their attitudes. It was just words to me until I started thinking, people can alter their lives by altering their attitudes. So I altered my attitude. I started living in the moment. It got to the point where I was enjoying prison. How strange is that? Because everything was just equally fine. It was just, I was so chill. I was into my yoga. I was into my place.
And then you have 54 days left.
Actually,
on the sentence,
there's more to that, but I don't know. It sounds so trite. I dropped some acid. I used to do a lot of acid. I think everybody should do acid at least once. Just break up all those conceptions you have about things you think you know about what life is, whatever it is.
And everybody who's done it has said exactly
that. Of course,
that.
And it just opens your perspective on everything, and everything outward and everything
Franco,
inward.
You've done acid too, right?
Yeah, I love it.
I love acid. Yeah. I mean, I don't do it. Now I'm too old to do it. Just too much work. But I did it back then. I used to do it in jail a lot. It used to come through the par abian stickers under the letters. So I dropped this acid, and I'm sitting on my bunk, and I'm meditating, and I'm in a great space, and I'm into the moments, and I'm going free, and all this good stuff. And I feel this ball of energy open up from out of my chest, and my heart is pulsing out this light of love, and tears are pouring down my face because I realized this is my reason for being. Simply to love. I didn't know that. When I discovered that, it was like, this is wonderful. All the cats, we used to have cats because of the rats, all the cats in the cell block jump up, and they're on my bunk, and they're on my lap. And all the cats are purring along with the vibe. They're all chilling on the acid vibe. It's like, and that literally was the moment that, from that point on, everything else has been determined by that's what I need to do. I'm touching my chest now. That energy, that heart chakra energy. My head and my balls obviously lead me astray. If I follow my heart leads me true. And I just need to trust it and follow it. And that... it made everything wonderful. And I was just, the birds were slough coming down out of the air, landing on my shoulders. I was just tweeting away in the courtyard, loving the sun and every day and every moment. But I'm also counting off the days. It's 56. I got 54 days to go free. Of course I'm a happy guy.
Right, sure.
And then the council shows up, unexpected visit. I'm thinking, oh, great, they're going to let me out early. And the American council, as soon as I see his face, I know something bad. And I'm worried, somebody at home, somebody hurt, somebody sick. Something bad. Not for me, of course. I'm going free in 54 days. And then I'm kind of stunned to find out that the High Court in Ankara, which had never finally officiated my sentence, my 4-year sentence, has rejected my original 4-year and 2-month sentence, and they've rescheduled me to go back to court here, and I will be sentenced to life in prison. Like, life? No, you don't understand. I'm going free in 54 days. It was like the sky fell on my head, and then I'm in the courtroom, and I have a chance to speak to this before being sentenced. And in the movie version of Midnight Express, the speech is full of anger and rage. Oliver Stone wrote that script, wrote that speech too. And it's, you're a nation of pigs. I fuck you all. I fuck your sons and daughters. The Turks are like, oh, really? Right. They issued an Interpol warrant for my arrest. Not when I escaped. Not when the book Midnight Express came out, but when that movie came out and they saw that scene with me fucking their sons and daughters, they issued an Interpol warrant, thank you, Oliver, that lasted for 20 years.
Wow.
20 more years. What I said in the court was something about the same spout I'm doing now, about laws change from time period to another, from geographical distinction from one place to another. If you're going to sentence me to more prison, I've been here for 4 years, I can't agree with you. All I can do is forgive you. That is all I could do, is forgive them. I wanted to affect them. They had my life in their hands. They didn't know who I was. And it did affect them. I could see it. The head judge, he looked down. He showed me. He said, my hands are tied. I wish I didn't have to issue this sentence. I wish I'd retired before I had to. Because he's the guy who gave me 4 years and 2 months. But he did. He issued the sentence. I'm kind of like floating above the courtroom, looking down now, and he issues a sentence, and he sentences me to life in prison, which he has the prerogative. He's able to lower it to 30 years, which he does.
Which might as well be life.
Thanks, I guess. 30 years life. And then the soldiers are chaining me up, and everybody's got their eyes down. They're all wishing me, the soldiers and the lawyer, my counts, everybody's wishing me Geç Michelson, which is Turkish for may it pass quickly. Geç Michelson, may it pass quickly? I just got 30 fucking years.
Wow.
And the escape switch, pow.
Right back on.
It was back on. And all the lessons I learned and all that heart chakra love energy and that chill that I got was sorely tested, because now I'm looking at the rest of my life in jail. I don't know how happy I'm going to be.
Yeah. And you've been you're trying to get transferred to this island.
Well,
prison,
one of the few advantages of having a 30-year sentence official from Ankara is it allows me to be transferred to other prisons. And I find out that Imrali Island Prison, about 17 miles off the coast in the Sea of Marmara, is this half-open prison where you work during the day, and I'm eligible to go there because it's part of the legal things under the law. Actually, the American Council had to really work for it, and they were talking about a prisoner exchange treaty, which was in place. They were starting to put in place and allowing Americans in foreign prisons to return home and foreign nationals to go back. It took 5 more years, but it actually is in place to this day, the prisoner exchange treaty, which it was my lawyers in Philly who were trying to make this happen.
Okay.
And they're telling me, we'll make this happen, Yeah, right, you make it happen, but I'm waking up every day, I'm still in jail. I look in the mirror, I lost 5 teeth. That was my biggest physical problem. My teeth get rotten out of my head.
And they also, you've kind of given up on lawyers anyway, because
fuck lawyers. I'm not waiting for anybody. I'm not waiting for anything. The switch went on. I'm done. One way or the other, I'm getting out of here. I am free or I'm dead. That was the choice. Life got real simple. Right. Early on, some of the early metaphysical, you get to think a lot in jail. You got a lot of time to think about things like, why am I here? I was in this prison, this life, this body, this existence. For me, what it came down to is, you die. What does it happen? There's either something or nothing. And if it's nothing, there's nothing to worry about. And if it's something, what the fuck is it? Because whatever this is, existence is fabulous. I mean, I'm looking forward to what's next. I don't want to go quite yet. Right. I'm enjoying this, but I'm fascinated. What could it be? What possibly could it be? Right. All these different religions have different views of what it might be. I think religion is the source of most human misery, but there's something.
This is true.
And I don't know what the something is, but I'm looking forward to finding out what it is. Right. What is it if somebody tells you what... If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Because if somebody tells you they know what's going on, they don't know what's going on. Right? Anyway, I get to this island, and I get transferred to the island, and it's just me and all Turks, and I'm the only foreigner there, and I speak good Turkish now. I mean, not colloquial Turkish. I can rap really well in it. And I make friends the first day with the Kapadai, the number one badass on the island, the gangster prisoner who pretty much runs everything, which... By now I know who they are. And I work. It's a work island, 17 miles up the coast. Ships, boats. Boats come from the mainland bringing produce and stuff. And then we work and we can it. And I worked in the canning factory. Actually, the first day they had me there, it was a free day. I got to swim in the sea. I've been bathing out of a sink once a week with a pitcher. With hot water. That's how we used to bathe in the jail. Life got so much. I'm in nature. I'm out in. I see the ocean and there's tall trees blowing into. I walk more than 32 paces in a straight line without coming up against the gray stone wall. Yeah. That's fucking heaven. And to see wind blowing in a tree, nature, your senses get so abraded by stone and steel and men and masculine, cold, masculine world. The prison sucks. There's no femininity in there. And I love women. I love that feminine nature of life. And, well, there's no feminine in jail. It's all hard angles. And here's nature out there. It was wonderful. The first day I was I'm picking stems off strawberries on this production line. And I ate so many strawberries, I shit like a goose for a week. But they were so good. And then I got transferred to a canning thing. We're putting lids onto cans. Again, if you want to appreciate your education, kids, put lids on cans for a while. You'll go back to NYU and get your degree.
Yeah, damn right.
And then I got myself transferred back to a lift and toting job because I want to get strong and healthy. And I'm a piece of steel. I'm young, I'm healthy, and I do my yoga every day. But I want to get really hard. And I'm carrying these 50-kilo sacks up from the little boats that come from the mainland up to the canning factory and such. And each of these little wooden boats, I mean, they're big, but they're wood. They all have a little wooden dinghy tied up behind them. And none of the boats spend the night in the harbor because of the prison island, except, as I discover one day, when there's a storm out at sea that makes it so rough, they can't go back. So they drop anchor and they spend the night in the harbor, and they all have the little wooden dinghies floating behind them. And that's my way out. I mean, when I first got to the island, I'm thinking, I'll try it. I'll swim. I'm a lifeguard. I'm a surfer. But 17 miles.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, especially after 5 years of jail.
It's a lot to row.
It'd be a lot for spits. Fuck the row. Rowing, I row forever. But swimming, no. But these little rowboats, that's my way out. Now I need to wait for a storm. And the first night there was a big storm was October 2nd, 1975. And I wake up in this big storm. And I've gotten past the night bed check. There's a lot of different ways of getting, like a couple of the copper would be down this accounting shit. All the work gets done. All prisoners panging cans and things. Somebody has to do the accounting work. And there's these two nerdy guys with adding machines sitting in the accounting shed, along with about 10 copper the gangster guys, who sit around there smoking joints and drinking Rocky and playing cards and slapping down dominoes and shit. So I arranged with the head guy to get me down to the accounting shed at night to party with the boys. So now I'm past the night bed check. So it's kind of accounted for.
It's a good idea.
They consider, we're locked down at night, and you got a night count and a morning count. But you work during the day, so you're woman around the island. And they consider the sea to be the wall around the island for the most part. And it's true.
Because it kind of is.
Yeah, it kind of is. And most of the guys here are shorter term. That's why there was less violence and shit, because people are here sort of chilling at Rahat. I got there because I got a long sentence, but it's like the American government is going to be transferring me back, the prisoner exchange treaty, which I talked up to everybody. So it would sort of cover over. If they're going to bring me back, why would I try and escape anyway? Right. Most of the guys on the island can't believe I got 30 years for 2 kilos of hash. Fuck, they can't believe it. Right. I couldn't believe it. Welcome to the club. Right. But it got me past the night bed check, and then on the night of the storm, I'm down in the accounting shed, and I'm slapping dominoes with these guys, and they're all. And then I tell them I don't feel good. My stomach is upset, and he says, "Here, have some Rocky." I said, "No, I don't want Rocky. Here, smoke a joint." No, I don't want any hash, man. I'm going to go back and chill out. And instead of going back to the lockup, the dorm where we are, I head down the cobblestones to the harbor, and I hide in this big stone concrete vat where we used to tomato paste and stuff because you press it. But this one's empty, and then I wait till past the night bed check, and everybody's gone, and I hear, at one point I'm climbing over the edge, and I hear footsteps, and the soldiers walking on the rainy beach, and I drop down into this vat, and I hear these footsteps on the rocks click, get closer and closer, and then the guy steps in under the overhang, and I see the flare of a match, and I hear, he's just lit a cigarette. He's standing right next to me on the other side of this little wall. I'm down in the bottom of this concrete vat, sending out no human vibration. I want to be a stone. I want to be an inanimate object and not send out any vibrations at all. And then finally he finishes the cigarette. I hear him walk off, and then I scurry up over this thing, and I'm crawling down across this like pulpy, rocky, sandy beach
now
towards the water.
At this point, you've got to be terrified in a way.
I'm scared shitless, but I'm so close now to escaping, which is that's all I've dreamed about for 5 years, and I'm there. But there's no turning back. Like, I'm crawling down the beach, and with this light from the pier that goes out, there's guards out there, but it's a rainy fucking night, and they got a spotlight that goes around, hits the shore and all, but nobody's looking. It's a rainy night, and it's like I'm crawling on my stomach stomach. I pull my hat down. I get to the water, and I go right in and start to swim, and all my clothes are getting wet, and my sneakers are getting wet. But again, I'm a lifeguard. I'm not worried about the swim. I'm worried about the guards on the dock seeing me, and I swim out past a couple of boats that are anchored, and I finally pull up in front of one little rowboat and pull myself over the side and drop down to the bottom, and the boat is swaying. I can feel it pulling on its tether, and the wind is blowing and shit, and my hands are so numb I got a knife that I'd stolen from the shed up top, and I start to cut the rope, a hemp rope, by the way, cut this rope on the rowboat, and then I hear whack, and this wooden hatch opens in the boat above me, and this Turkish fisherman leans out and hocks this gob of spit right out over my head. If he looks down, I'm dead.
Wow.
I'm frozen down there, and then whack, I hear the hatch close again, and I start cutting the rope, and the fucker won't cut. I'm ready to gnaw it apart with my teeth, and then the rope breaks, and the boat starts rocking back, and it starts heading back towards the shore and the rocks and the guards with the guns, and I grab the oars and realize they don't have oar locks on Turkish boats. They got this peg in the side of the boat and this big wooden, like a pretzel of rope around the big wooden oar, and somehow you fit. If I'm in Central Park on a Sunday, I figure it out. I'm drifting back towards the rocks, and I'm trying to put it in. It's missing, and I could feel myself panicking. It's like, slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
And I figure it out, and I start to pull, and the boat starts to stop, and then it's moving in the other direction, and I'm rowing, and I'm concentrating and keeping the rhythm, and I'm going past the other boats. I don't want anybody to see me. I'm moving between. It's like a little horseshoe-shaped harbor there. I'm going between the rocks here and the boats there, and I'm rowing, I'm concentrating, I'm keeping the rhythm, and I'm rowing, and I look up and I realize I'm past the last of these boats. I'm out of the harbor. I'm in the open sea. I am beyond the bounds. For the first time in 5 years, I'm free.
And you know where? And do you know where to go?
I sort of know where to go. I know from the map. I've seen. I need to get. What I need to do is, Imrali Island is 17 miles off the coast of Asia Minor. But there's a current that comes down from the Bosphorus, and it sweeps down through here and sweeps down around to the Dardanelles. And I know that I need to get straight across and hit the mainland and not get swept down south, because then I'll be out there all day. So I'm rowing and aiming. First, I use the lights of the harbor. I keep it on. When I lose the lights, it meant I know the current's pushing me this way. It's why I had to pull harder with my right arm than the left. My hand got all bloody. I wrapped a handkerchief around the right one, and I'm pulling. But I keep the lights. But eventually, I lost the lights, and now I'm just out here in the rainy pitch black,
and the
rowing.
boats wouldn't leave because of the storm. I mean, while you're on a rowboat.
It's so fucking raw. At one point out here, these huge waves, like a big whale, come up underneath me, and then down the other side, and then up the other. I'm scared shitless. But way off in the distance, I think I see like little red lights somewhere, so I sort of use those as a guide, and then I'm rowing, and I'm chanting out there. If they catch me, they beat me. I make it up here, and I'm rowing, and I'm rowing, and I'm rowing. And it's like, I know I'm exhausted, but I'd row 1,000 fucking miles. My life is literally back in my hands again. I fucked up 5 years ago, and I got myself busted, and I got myself out. That makes such a difference.
Right.
That literally gave me back a sense of self. That prison, 24 hours a day, it says you're a loser, you're a loser, you're a loser. When you believe that, you are. And guys come out of jail hardened in ways that they can't change anymore. Like ignoring, when you ignore another human being's pain, it's at a cost to your own humanity. And after a while, you have to ignore shit. You just have to, and it costs you. And you get hard in ways, or you get broken in ways that you're never going to fix. And like I was at the point, like something was going to either get hard and never open, or get broken and never get fixed, which is why I got so desperate to get out. And I'm rowing and rowing and rowing through the night and pulling, and the next thing I know, suddenly the boat scrapes up again on the beach, and I look up and I realize there's this wild, rugged coastline of Asia Minor, and the storm is blowing, and the sun's starting to come on. I pull this little boat up beyond the tide. I love this little boat. I hug the bow, and the sun is starting to rise, but off in the distance, I can see Imrali Island, and I know they'll be doing a morning bed check. It'll take them a while. They'll have to check them. I'm missing, and they'll have to go search the island, because guys disappear on the island. Right. You know, there were guys up on the other side of this big tractor tires one time trying to escape off the island with this big tractor tire that they lashed a couple of boards on. The waves kept knocking it back. The guards walk over the hill, and there's these idiots trying to push this big tractor tire. It's like, are you guys shitting me? So they're going to look for me, but I know the clock is running.
Yeah, you have to move.
I know.
And you have an idea of where you are?
I know exactly where I am. I got a map. I mean, I've had, this is all you do for 5 years. I knew all the escape routes near the board. I know where the river was. I know this or that.
And you're just trying to get into Greece at this point.
Yeah. Right? Well, first I've got to get up off the coast, and it's the eastern coast of Asia Minor, and I know from my map that I need to make a couple of little towns here and then get up to a larger town, Bursa, and then from Bursa I need to get back around and over from the Asian continent, where we are now, over the big bridge back to Istanbul, where I got a friend who we'll get to him. So I start running north up the beach. And it is the finest morning of my life. I mean, I'm running up this beach and I'm free and the sun's coming up, birds are... I actually find I'm so dry from the night. Drier than I am sitting here now. I got all the salt water, and I find this, because of the rain at night, a bunch of puddles from next to the rocks, and I put my face in the water and drink a bunch of water, and I make my way around a whole bunch of rocks and boulders, and the waves are crashing on them. I get around these rocks and I look up, and there's 3 tall antenna with red lights on them, which had been my markers during the night. It happens to be a Turkish army base. Like, holy shit. So I go back around the boulders. No. But then I realize what it was. I go back around the boulders and I climb up this narrow incline, a canyon going all the way up to the top, and I make it up, and it's kind of wild, rugged coast here, and then I work my way through the woods way around the army base, and I come to like sort of dirt, and then there's fields, and I see farmers in the distance, and there's a dirt road, and that becomes cobble, and there's this old Turkish guy leaning up against the wall smoking a pipe, and I ask him, Baba, how do I get to this Mudanya, which is the name of a town up the coast that I know that can get me to Bursa?
Go ahead, drink, man. I see you Turkish.
Yeah. He looks me over. I'm all wet and muddy, and my hands all wrapped up, and he said, where'd you learn to speak Turkish? So I kind of check him out. I say, in prison in Istanbul. He says, for hash? I said, yeah. He says, you want to buy hash? I said, no, I don't want any hash. I just need to get the Bursa. He said, well, there's some farmers over there. They got produce. They're taking them up to Mudanya. You go. So I talk to these farmers, and I get in the back of this old beat-up Volkswagen van, and I give this guy a couple of lira, and I'm sitting against this dirty crack window, and the farmers are driving along this windy mountain road, and they're passing around a little bottle of cologne, which everybody sprays on themselves. Like, that helps, right? You know, for the smell. And I learned how to turn my nose and my ears off in prison. To smell, because the stink.
You kind of have to, yeah.
So, you don't even know the smell. The smell in jail is so bad. And the sound. I could turn my ears off to all the noise and the radios, but keep them tuned to a sound. I could be sound asleep while people are yelling or radios are on, but there's a sound which is after night lockdown. If the door opens again, it's usually not a good thing. Right. It means something's happening, something that shouldn't be happening. A lot of times it's guards coming in for a check and a search and shit, or just something bad. So that sound wake me up from a dead sleep. Otherwise, I could turn my ears off. And where am I? The car. Oh yeah. So we're driving along, and the driver. He's driving along this mountain road. And he's talking to everybody. He's got his head turned. I'm looking at his face. I'm in the back seat, and he's talking to us. It's like, look at the fucking road, dude. We're so close to the edge. I think, oh, here we go off the edge again. But he makes it. We make it to this next town, and again, stop me when you've had enough. I get to Bursa, and I go to a bus station, and I get a ticket. I buy a chocolate bar and a bag of pretzels. I've got money again from my dad. Smuggle money into me. That's a whole other thing we miss. And I get a bus out of Bursa, and it takes me up and around the Asia Minor coast. And in late afternoon, I see the spires of Istanbul off in the distance. And then over the bridge, and we get to a hotel where this friend of mine, Wolfie, who had been in jail a couple of years earlier, he'd gone out, but he'd become a Muslim. He speaks terrific Turkish. He converted. He was working as assistant manager of a hotel. And Wolfie owed me a big favor from helping him in jail one time escape a really bad beating. So I figured he'd take care of me. And I get to the hotel. I figured he'll hide me out in the basement. A week will go by. We'll get some false papers. I'll split. And I get there, and the guy says, oh, Wolfgang, no, you just missed him. He left yesterday for Afghanistan. I was like, that's the end of my plan. I'm done now. I'm totally freelancing now. What I want to do is roll over in the corner and cry, because I got off the island. I made it here, and nobody to help me. But, that doesn't help. I'd have cried for 5 years in jail.
Yeah.
It's funny, because sometimes the toughest guys by day, you hear them sobbing in their sleep at night. I mean, sobbing in their sleep. Shh. Don't wake those guys up. Yeah. Don't mention to them tomorrow you heard them crying in their sleep at night either.
Then you'll be crying.
But I started wandering. I wandered the streets of Istanbul, and it was weird because I'm wandering the streets and I'm freaked out and paranoid, but I'm look at the dark hair and women, and tits and legs, dogs, smells and perfume and shops, and it's like, wait a second, I'm still on the street here, and I got this really blonde hair then and a big blonde mustache.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Which stood out in Turkey. It definitely stood out. So I went to a drugstore and I bought some C.R. Renkboy, a black hair dye, and then I checked into a really funky hotel down near the water, and the guy wanted to know, where's your passport? I said, it's in my luggage. He said, where's your luggage? I said, I lost it. Yeah, he charged me about triple what the room should have cost, but I don't care. And I go up in some little roachy room, and I check it out, the window to the back, and a fire escape, and I can jump out there, and I have a chair against the door, and I take out this hair dye, and I speak good Turkish, but I don't read it very well, but it's something about put a little on the inside of your wrist and wait 24 hours to see if you have an allergic reaction. I really don't have time for that. So I take this cottony shit, and this stuff smells like cat piss, ammonia, and I'm sticking all and make my hair all black, and I put it on my mustache, and the hair it's all gunky and black, but it looks okay. But the mustache, it looks so phony. It looks like this big chunk of licorice on my lip that I go back out to the drugstore, buy a razor, come back, shave off this mustache. Now I got this lank black hair, this sort of outline where my mustache used to be, in raw skin. You know, you got a mustache for years, it looks weird. But I guess I looked okay. I spent the night in the hotel room, waking any sound, and I'm ready to jump out the window. And the next morning, I made my way to the bus station, and it was lucky because it was Bayram time. It was like Christmas time around here, Christmas, New Year. Everybody's traveling on the road, which is good for me.
It was nice and crowded.
Yeah, which was good for me. And I get a bus, and I jump on a bus heading towards, I know, again, from the maps, and I've talked, and that's all you do in prison is talk about escape. I know from the maps, I know where the river is. Edirne, a couple of 100 kilometers to the east. It's an old border town on the river that comes down from Bulgaria, separating Maritsa River, separates Greece and Turkey. And I know I need to get to Edirne, so I take a bus, and we head out of Istanbul, and we're heading towards Edirne. About 10 minutes out of Istanbul, suddenly the bus stops, and the door opens, and a Turkish cop steps in, looks down the aisle, and my heart stops.
Yeah.
And then he turns to the driver, and he's just checking some papers. Martial law, they're always imposing it then. And he goes out, and the door closes, and my heart starts to beat again. We get to Edirne.
You don't have good luck with buses.
Sure, man. We get to Edirne late in the afternoon, and we stop at the bus station, and I'm hanging around. I'm looking around at the, it's a cab buses, and there's a lot of cabbies there, too. And I'm checking out the cabbies, and this... They had all these old American cars, all these reefers, like being in an old gangster movie back then. All these old 54, the 54 Buick, a blue one that this cabbie, young long-haired Turkish kid, I see him with this cab, and I go up and I tell him some bullshit story about that I'm camped south of here, down past the last little town. I know from the map, south of Edirne, there's a couple of towns. The last town is called Karakasim, Black Kasim, and past that on the map, there's nothing. It's all this wild, open land, riverland, borderland between Turkey and Greece. But what we know is it's patrolled because they've been enemies for 1,000 years, the Turks and the Greeks. It's a heavy border, but it's all wild, open country. So I need to get down there. I tell them...
and get across the border,
And get across the border. That still has to come. First, I have to get there. I tell them this bullshit story that I'm camped with some friends, and we got separated, and I need to get to the campground south of he says, Karakasim? I say, yeah, Karakasim. So he first thing he says is, where'd you learn to speak Turkish? I said, I did 20 months in jail in Istanbul. You want to buy hash? No, I don't want the hash, man. I don't want hash. Just take me south of here. And he takes me south, and we go past the last little town, and then past Karakasim, there's a small little village somewhere, but it's like it's nothing. So he's asking people, and he pulls over at one point, and he's asking people, where's the campground? And I look, and I see a headline in a newspaper, and I make out Imrali, which is the name of the island, Imrali Island, where my prison, which just freaks me out. One of these books, I published a picture from the Turkish newspaper. It's a front page picture of this blonde-haired prisoner. It's a pen and ink. Somebody drew it, and it's like the back of the big boat, and you're in a little rowboat, and there's this muscular. I should look like this guy. This muscular blonde-haired prisoner with his shirt off, looked like a romance novel with a big knife. He got a big knife, cutting the rope on the rowboat. That's the front page of the headline with the story of me escaping off Imrali Island. Wow, I put that in one of the books. What I saw was the headline Imrali, which just freaked me out. And I'm telling him, go. And he stops at one taverna there, and he yells something about the campground. There's a couple of guys and people, and there's one guy starts walking down. He's got a tie open, and I realize it's an off-duty cop. And he walks down the steps. He's got a beer in his hand, and he says, "Campground. Where's the campground?" He says, looks around. There's no fucking campground here. It's all restricted. It's an army and such. He says, "Oh," and I'm telling him, "Go, fucking go." And the kid gets it. He drives away, and I look, and the cop is looking at me as we drive away, drinking his beer. And the road runs out.
Dyeing your hair was a good idea.
Fuck yes. The road runs out. out. Well, again, this is Turkey, 1975. I know they don't have it's old telegrams. They don't have internet. It's slow.
Right.
But tick, tick, tick.
Fuck yeah.
I know it's ticking, and I'm really concerned about that headline, Raleigh. I don't know what the rest of the paper said. I never saw the headline until I got home and people sent it to me. I'm assuming that's what it said, Raleigh. It was enough to just freak me out, thinking I'm in the paper. They're talking about me, and those people are reading the story. And this guy stayed. And we hit a dirt road, and the guy says, I can't go any further. I'll wreck my car. I said, please, I know my friend somewhere, that campground. I know it's somewhere ahead. And I give him the last of my Turkish money. And he drives a little ways, and then he stops. He said, I can't go any further. I said, no, this is good. And I actually jump up on the hood of his old Oldsmobile, and I look west, and I'm looking at these rolling hills and going down. Somewhere has got to be the river, somewhere up ahead. I mean, Freedom is so close, I can smell fucking Greece. That wind is blowing. That's coming from Greece. Somewhere up ahead is the river, and I know that's got to be the border. At least it's close to the border. It's changed over the years, but the river is the center of the border. And I tell him, I say, okay, look, my friends are somewhere down here, and I'll find him. I know the campground, and he says, yeah, he's going to go, and I say, go with God. And he says, hey, wait a second. And he's trying to talk me out. He says, it's not healthy to be out here by yourself at night. Let me tell you. I said, no, I'll find my friends. And he says, all right, then go with God yourself. And off he goes, and his taxi goes away in this plume of dust. And I settle down in the cornfield, waiting for the sun to go down. And I can hear clang. I can hear sheep, farmers bringing their sheep. I can hear bells in the distance clanging off. I'm going to have to be really quiet. I could hear bells. Those sheep are way the fuck across the field. Yeah. And these Turkish mosquitoes start buzzing around. I don't even slap them. This is your last chance, Turkish mosquito, to drink my blood. Get it while you can. Yeah, after tonight, I'm gone.
Yeah, you're so close at this point.
I'm so close. I'm wired, wiped out, but totally wired. And
were you able to eat anything over this time, or
I grabbed little things here and there, but mostly I'm running on adrenaline.
So you got to be a little disoriented at that point.
Oh, I'm getting whacked at this point because I've been sleeping weird and such. But again, I'm so close. I'm so motivated. I'm 28 too. I'm young. I'm healthy. I don't even eat much now. Yeah. Back then, I'd go 2 days without eating, not even think, what's that feeling? I'm starving. I haven't eaten in 2 days. But food was not what I'm concerned about. It's getting to that river and. God. So I'm working across. I'm going up and down these hills, and it's sliding. At one point, I see these lights clicking on up on the across the head. This is Border Patrol. These are guards clicking their lights here and there, and I see these distant flashlight clicking on in the hills, and then at one point I hear dogs, which just freaks me out. Fucking dogs, not dogs. Please, no dogs. In fact, I take off my shoes and socks, my old sneakers, and bury them at the base of this tree where I'm at, because I've had these forever. They stink so bad. I figure the dogs will come, they'll sniff these sneakers and blow their noses out. And now I'm walking barefoot, and my feet are getting chewed up. Shows how goofy I'm getting. Yeah. I leave my sneakers, I'm barefoot, but... So I'm making my way down, and the ground starts to get a little wetter, and then there's bushes and trees, and somewhere's got to be the fucking river. And at one point, I think I see metal glint, and I open up some bushes, and it's tanks. I see tanks out here in the woods with camouflage over. Whoa! Let the sleeping tanks lie. Close the bushes and head the other direction. Then it starts getting really muddy, even more so, and my feet are moving through there, and I get pretty close. I forget stuff that we don't even need it. At one point I found myself near a drainage ditch, and I dropped down into the bottom of this drainage. It's just a rest, just to get off this exposed hill. This is before I even got to the tanks. And I'm resting down there in the mud, and I hear the frogs chirping, and I'm resting, and then I start to get up, and I hear singing. And these two Turkish border guards, it's Bayram, they're like sugar Bayram time, and they're saying back and forth to each other. They're saying, I drop down in the ditch, once again, inanimate, stone, send out no human vibrations. They walk right above me. I got to reach up and grab their ankle. I'm down there in the mud, and off they go. That's what I said, oh man, I scramble over the hill, and that's when I saw, then there's the tanks over here, and I head this way, and then the woods start to get real muddy, and somewhere up ahead, now it's so dark I can barely see anything, and the branches are whacking me, but I know I'm so close, and the ground is getting muddy, and I can hear water. I can hear water banging. I'm through some bushes, and then suddenly I come, and there's water. It's so dark, but there's water right in front of me, and I'm head right in. I'm in, and it's up to my knees. It's up to my waist. I'm about to swim, and suddenly it's back down to my knees, and it's out, and I hit these bushes, and I made it. I'm across. But that was just too easy. And it is. I walk a couple of yards. It's this little thin island off the coast. I part some bushes, and there's the real river. Washing down from Bulgaria, ends in the Aegean Sea. On the other side is Greece. At least I think it's Greece. And I pick a couple of thorns out of my feet, and I'm wet, and I'm barefoot, and I'm in desperate fucking danger, but I have never felt so alive in my fucking life. My skin, it's like it makes acid seem tame. I am just wired, and I go into the river, and I start to swim, and at first I'm kicking, I'm doing a breaststroke, and the river washes me down. I'm trying not to make too much noise, because whether it's a Turkish bullet on that side or a Greek bullet on this side, I was still dead. But after a little while, the water is washing me. It's like, fuck this, let me just not drown. And I'm kicking and swimming and kicking, and then my foot hits a rock, and then I'm on some mud, and I'm bracing against the water, and I collapse on this muddy riverbank, and it's this burst of joy comes up out of me. I have to like control myself, and I wandered off into the woods, talking too much. My lip stuff is getting all caked up. I'm wandering into the woods. I'm such a space case now, and I avoid any dirt roads that I might cross. And at one point, I sort of find myself up on another little dirt road, and I know I shouldn't be there, but I'm so tight. It's like pre-dawn, and I think I see like a wooden farmhouse or something, and suddenly real dogs come barking out, and they chase me, and I run down the road, and the dogs and they go away, and I'm about to get off the road, but up ahead I can see like a tunnel of trees, tunnel of the road's going through like a tunnel of trees. I think I'll just get to that tunnel up there, and then I'll get off the road, and I approach that, and I don't even see it, but it's like a wooden kiosk, like an outhouse, and I walk past, and suddenly this bayonet slams down in front of my face, and my arms go, bayonet comes in your face, your arms go up in the air like this, and this guy yells something at me, and I don't understand him, and he yells again, and I realize, I don't understand this guy. I speak good Turkish, which means he's speaking Greek, which means this must be Greece. I made it. I collapse on the ground with the arms in the air, laughing like a loon, which freaks him out. And he jumps back and pulls out his gun, and he starts screaming. He puts his flashlight down, and all these soldiers come around. And I'm in the circle of lights, and this one guy sticks his watch in the minute. He says, 4:30. 4:30 in the morning. 4:30. What are you doing here? I said, I'm an American. I just escaped from Turkey. Yay! I just escaped.
So you just say I just escaped from Turkey, because they hate each other anyway.
They hate each other. My crime for pot, I know that Greeks will never send me back to Turkey. Not for this crime, not for pot. It's one reason I didn't buy a gun, which I could have bought. You have money, you buy anything in jail. Because if I got a gun and I'm escaping and you got one and you're going to try and shoot me, I'm going to try and shoot you first. And then aside from the moral karmic implications of killing a human being, legally, I'd have to live in Paraguay for the rest of my life. So I didn't buy a gun, and I knew the Greeks would never send me back. Not for 2 kilos of marijuana, especially after spending almost 5 years in prison.
Right.
And they've been enemies. So they take me to a little room in the woods, and they give me this, I'm tiny, really, really tiny little room in the woods. But I know, it'll be fine. I'm going to get out. And this military intelligence guy comes to question me, and he's got these piercing eyes and these big bushy eyebrows, and he speaks great English, and he starts asking me these questions. He wants to know about the this and that. You know, it's like, hold the fuck on. I've been pushed around for 5 years now. I'm an American citizen. I know my rights. I demand to see the American Council. This guy just looks me over, blows some smoke at me. He says, let me tell you what your rights are, kid. We find you coming out of a totally restricted military zone. You got no Susan socks. You got no papers. We could arrest you for entering Greece illegally. We could take you and throw you back across the river to the Turks.
Which would be the worst.
We could take you out in the woods and shoot you, and nobody would know the difference. Or you could shut up and cooperate. Well, when you put it that way, what would you like to know? He's asking about the insignia on the uniforms of the guards on the Imrali Island. There's a radar base in the top of the island. About the radar base, I tell him about the tanks in the woods, and he's got this map. He opens up this map. It's like, how secret can this shit be if I know about it? He shows me this map. It's like anthills on the map, and I show him, here's where I was, and here's Karakassim, and I went here, and I walked there, and he said, well, you're a very lucky man, William. I said, yeah, I know. He says, no, you don't know. This whole area down here, we think this is all mined. It's like, oh, holy shit. I told this story when I came home. My old crazy grandmother heard about this, and she says every week she used to go to church and light a candle, and each one of those candles was one of those bombs in the ground, and that's why I didn't step on them. It's like, I don't know, but
whatever got you through.
Keep lighting those candles, Granny. She's long gone now, but now my mom, who's still around, almost 90, at the end of every conversation, it's keep lighting those candles, Mom, because I need them. Anyway, They contacted the American Council. I spent 12 days in this little room in jail in the woods. Again, I could stand on my head for 12 days after 5 years in Turkish prison. But the Greeks did the best thing. They deported me as a bad influence upon the youth of Greece, which is the same charge they made against Socrates.
Really?
But Socrates, a bad influence on the youth of Greece. They didn't ask me to drink hemlock, which is very nice. They did the nicest thing they could do.
They did it as a favor.
They took me to Thessalonica Airport. Actually, we contacted my dad. He wired money. Got a ticket.
Speaking of that, I'm sorry to interrupt. That radio silence we talked about in letters.
Yeah.
He knows you're going. He knows you're making the move.
The last letter that I wrote, the last letter of the Midnight Express letters, let me plug my own book. The first one is to my family telling I'm busted. The last one is to my dad saying I'm waiting for certain conditions and weather conditions allow. Again, code that we would know, but it was pretty easy to smuggle letters out because nobody really read them. And especially slang, and they've got so many foreigners that they can't have 19 linguists up in the office. They just want to know, is there anything in it that comes in like contraband? Right. So you could pretty much, but the last letter, I could smuggle letters off the island real easy. You give it to somebody who's traveling. So the last letter to my dad said, I'm waiting for weather conditions, and when they line up, I'm going. There's a bunch of trains running. Again, our metaphors. There was the transfer train, meaning the transfer track, and then there was the Midnight Express on the far out track. And whatever train was coming in first, and it was the Midnight Express on the far out track because out I came, and the storm presented the opportunity, and then I got so lucky. I mean, there were so many places where you could break like this, break like this. When I'm hot, I'm really hot. When I'm not, I am really not. And suddenly, I was hot again, and everything broke right. And they put me on a plane. They took me to Thessalonica, took me on the street, and took a picture of me. In fact, somewhere there's a picture of me at the airport in New York holding up the passport with this black hair that I dyed myself in the hotel room. And they took me to the airport, Thessalonica Airport, no handcuffs, nothing. I've got a ticket. I'm flying out on the next plane to Frankfurt. I've got money and stuff. And suddenly, while we're waiting, there's an announcement on the loudspeaker. William Hayes, telephone. William Hayes, who the fuck is calling me at the Thessalonica Airport? It's the American Consul, Jim Murray, who'd set all this stuff up. He said, we've just realized that you're flying to Frankfurt, which is the first flight out. He said, Germany and Turkey have a very tight extradition treaty because of all the foreign workers back and forth. He said, they'll probably hold you and contact the Turkish government and they'll send you back. It's like, holy shit, what should I do? He said, go back to the Thessalonica prison, spend another night there. We'll come in tomorrow, take you down to Athens and fly you out of Athens, which sounds like a logical thing to do, but I've been moving forward since I left the island. I got a passport in my hand. I got money in my pocket. I got a ticket, and I can't stand the thought of another fucking night in jail. I just said, you know what? I'm going. I'm moving over. He said, okay, good luck, but we can't help you if you go. I said, no, I just know I got to go. And the flight is announced, and I get on there, and as soon as the plane leaves the ground, I think, what the fuck are you doing? But it turns out my instinct was, again, my heart followed my instinct was right. Frankfurt has a transit lounge where people moving from one place to another, you don't actually enter the country. You don't go through customs. You can just change planes. Right. And the first plane out, leaving in 45 minutes, is to Amsterdam. And I think, if I'm going to be free anywhere in the world, it's Amsterdam.
Place to go.
So I buy another chocolate bar and a bag of pretzels and a copy of Playboy, which, has changed a lot in 5 years. And then I fly to Amsterdam and land, and I move through customs like all of the other people, and this long-haired hippie customs guy stamps my passport like anybody else. Luggage? No, I don't have any. Fine, sir, please. And I take a bus into the heart of the city like any other free man on a bus and spend my first 4 days of freedom in Amsterdam, which was just amazing.
Awesome. So when you get home to your family, that's got to be the greatest moment of your life.
Yeah. I stepped off the plane at Kennedy Airport. Literally, at the end of the aisle of the plane, there was a guy saying, Mr. Hayes? Mr. Hayes, paging the passengers. I figured it's the police, and I'm going to get fingerprinted. I hate that ink on my hands again. And I say, you're with the police? He says, no, actually, I'm with Pan Am. Follow me, please. Which I do, down some back stairs. I don't even go through customs, which for just a moment I thought, no, stop that. Don't be thinking that way anymore. And he opens some doors, and there's my dad. And his hair's all silver, but his eyes are still blue, and he's shining, and there's my brother and my lawyer, and we all hug, and it's so wonderful. I miss family so much. And my dad says, Will, there's a couple of reporters upstairs, but it might be tough. So if you don't want to talk to them, we'll slip out a back door. And I say, I'm thinking there's a couple of guys with notepads. How hard can that be? I just been in prison for 5 years. I'm thinking, fuck that. I'm free. I'll talk to anybody. Bring them on. Yeah. So we go upstairs and we open some big double doors, and this huge crowd is there, and the people start to part, and these lights start going on, and cameras are coming up, and they lead us to a table up front with NBC microphones all over it, and people are screaming out questions like, holy shit. So that was my introduction back into life again, was a press conference. Billy, what's it feel like to be home? Well, fuck should I know? I just got here. I haven't seen my mom. This went on for the next 3 years. This never stopped. And, it led to a book and a film.
And a movie, yeah.
And I'm still talking about it 40 years later.
Well, I tell you, look, I don't want to take tons of your time, and I appreciate all the time you've given us. But I do have a couple other quick questions, and then
I'm here as long as you want me to be here. I'm happy that you're plugging my book.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you got to sell shit these days.
Absolutely.
And, once I start talking about this stuff, I get so revved up.
Well, you get the movie, right? Yeah. So now you write the book.
Right.
The book now has been altered to mirror the movie, from what I've heard. Like they didn't change that.
Oh, I have a new version of Midnight Express that's out. I mean, again, I've got Midnight Express, I've got the Midnight Express letters, and we've got Midnight Return, which is my sequel book that's going to come out in the fall. I had it out as an ebook, but then my wife, strangely enough, hadn't read Midnight Return for a bunch of weird reasons. As soon as she read it online, she pulled it offline, edited the shit out of it, which is good. She's brutally honest with me, which boy do I need, especially in Hollywood. Everybody's blowing smoke up here. She is brutally honest with me, which is so good. And we re-edited it, and the book's much better now. So I'm going to it's coming out again. And by the way, Amazon, that's where you get
Amazon.com.
Yeah, that's where you get.
And we'll put the link.
You can get them as ebooks and or print books, and that one's coming out. But in that book, I wrote about a lot of the stuff later on that we're talking about.
Right. And so there's a couple of things in the movie that they changed.
Big things.
We mentioned the
escape.
The escape. They have you killing a guard.
They have me killing a guard, taking a key, and skipping out the door. And I always say, if it had been that easy to skip out the door, it wouldn't have taken me 5 years.
Which is nowhere near as interesting as the story you just told.
I asked Alan Parker, the director, who's brilliant. It's one reason why we're probably still talking, because that movie holds up, and it still has, and it shocked the shit out of people. He did a great job, and Brad, of course, gave his heart and soul. I miss Brad so much.
Probably the most intense first 10 minutes of any film I've ever seen.
And a lot of it, again, the escape, the bus is all accurate, the airport is accurate. I say that the film emotionally is accurate. They made some changes. They changed the escape. I first saw the movie Midnight Express. Alan Parker, they brought me to a little screening room in Manhattan at Columbia somewhere, and I sat in a little room all by myself and watched this movie. I could barely speak at the end of this film. And Alan said, well, Billy, what do you think of the movie? I said, I love the film. I miss my rowboat. I mean, what happened to my boat? That's that escape gave me back my life, gave me back my sense of self. And he said, Billy, what 45 minutes of this film do you want to cut to put the rowboat in? The audience has had enough. Get them out of the bloody theater. I understand that. And as a filmmaker myself now, you're in one location. You have to change to go to an island. It's a new location, establish new characters. You've got to shoot on the water at night. That's so expensive. You got to do 3 days of running and hiding through Turkey, and then at night cross. It's really expensive. They made this movie for, I think, $2.7 million. They spent more than that on the P&A on this movie. Well, so there are economic reasons. The artistic reasons, as Alan said, was it's enough. They don't need an escape. If we did the escape, people would say, great film, except for that made-up Hollywood ending.
I guess that makes sense.
I thought that's what's going to happen.
And the other thing that, which was a big thing, Rifki. In the movie, Rifki
biting the tongue out.
Is there a Rifki to begin with?
He's again, there was a lot of combinations of characters because they got so many people and so many events, and then I combined characters from life into the first book, Midnight Express. They then combine characters into the movie, so it's hard for me to follow who's what anymore. But Rifki, the character, gets his tongue bitten out.
Yes, by you.
By me. He was the informer. I didn't do that, but I actually don't have problems with that scene in terms of violence, because violence was just part of jail. It was there all the time. I didn't do that. I actually... Strange to say, I actually tried to kill this one guy who got my friend beaten real bad. I wasn't as successful as they were in the movie to get the informer's tongue bitten, but that guy got a friend of mine beaten real bad. He set him up, and then so I tried to attack him, and the guards broke it all up and stuff. Right. But to have the tongue bitten out, they loved it. The informer gets his tongue bitten out. Right. Was it gratuitous? I don't think so. I can tell you if I won't, but endless brutal, violent stories of shit that happens in jail. It's just part of it. So I don't have a problem with that. My problem was, as we explained, the courtroom scene where they've got him cursing out the people where I forgave them. My problem is the escape, which is an afterthought.
Right. It makes you look like almost a more violent person than you are, a more angry person, or more...
It probably does, and part of that is because from the outside, people have their impression of what prison is, and they do that. Yes, they read my book. Brad read my book endlessly. He had it all folded down, and he knew little things. And I sat with Oliver Stone in a hotel. He was an unknown screenwriter when I met him. And we sat in a hotel room for the Mayfair Hotel for about a week. About 8, 10, 12 hours a day, drinking coffee, smoking joints, snorting lines, yelling and screaming. He was comparing his Vietnam experience with my prison experience, and using that, he had a script that got him the job to write Midnight Express that nobody in Hollywood would make, called Platoon, which he gave me to read. I mean, it was brilliant. It took 5 more years before people would make Platoon. So Oliver was an angry young man, and crazy. I love him, but he was really crazy. But it's like being in a washing machine on tilt with him all day. But we got...
And you walked around the wheel every day, so you know crazy when you
I know crazy. I really know crazy. But that was great. But, we did that, and then the script one... I asked him, I said, what's going to happen now? He said, I'm going to go to a cabin in the mountains. I'm going to write a script, and then it's like your child. You give it to them, you send it out there in the world, and you hope that it does well because it's out of your hands because you have no control over it anymore.
Yeah, and it was nominated for an Oscar. It won a couple too, right?
It won Best Screenplay. It won Best Sound. Giorgio Moroder, what brilliant music. It won Best Costume. Melina Canonaro got costume. She's an Italian costumer. She went to Istanbul with her girlfriend, both gorgeous little Italian girls, and they had their cameras, and they walked up to a couple of Turkish guards, and they said, will you take a picture with us? And the guard fixes his helmet and said, if you or I, guys try to take pictures of the Turkish soldiers, they break your camera, they break your face. Right. And they get all these pictures, and they come back, and they use exactly, which is why when I walked on the set on Malta, they brought me over to do some PR, essentially. I walk on the set and I see these guards, these Turkish prison guards with their uniforms. It's like, holy shit.
I was going to say,
it was weird. They were shooting a scene on the balcony where Brad and Randy and John Hurt are up in the balcony and they're talking about escape. And I'm standing there watching this scene, and it's like, it's so weird. Like, that's me. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. It's my sister, my daughter. It's like, but then I turned around and this guard was standing there, this big Paul Smith who played the bad guy. Most of the guards in prison are just guys doing jobs. They're living in a really nasty, dangerous environment. They work like 6 days on, 6 days off, about 12 hours a day. They make very little money, which is why they're open to bribes. Most of them are just guys. 1 or 2 of them were badasses. The guard who did the beating, he was a sadist. He liked to hurt people. He liked to walk in the room and have everybody do that POW stance and look down and just pray that he doesn't focus on you. Right. And when he did, like, he beat me one time. He stands right in front of you. He lets you see this hand. He had a hand like a ham. Nothing fast. He lets you see this hand moving back, and you're watching the hand, and he's looking at your eyes because that's what he gets off on, and he knows the fear is coming in your fucking eyes. And then the hand, bang, hits your head, and your head rings, and the tears, literally, you get smashed in the face, tears run down your face, and what he's waiting for is for you to come at him, and then him and all the rest of the guards beat the shit out of you. Otherwise, you just stand there and you just take it.
He hit me like
thing
you can do.
Yeah, there's nothing you can. You could do other stuff, but there's no points in attacking the guard. Yeah. It's just nothing in it. Yeah. But he was a sadist. But my biggest problem with the movie Midnight Express is you don't see any good Turks. It creates an overall impression that all Turks are terrible people. Istanbul's a horrible place. That's not true. I loved Istanbul. Right. I told you I went there 3 times. I love the city. It's great. I get along great with the Turks. They have an incredible life force, the Turks, as far as I know. When it's not tempered by wisdom, it can be frightening. Most of the guys in prison, their life force has not been tempered by wisdom, which is why they're in there. They're bad. So
one of the things that absolutely shocked me is you went back to Turkey in like 2007. You went back. Like how on earth?
Interpol warrant all those years for my arrest. They don't want me back. At one point, this lady was talking to me about, she still is, about doing a documentary. She followed me around everywhere. We do all sorts of shit. We requested to go back to Turkey. We had people talking about doing a reality show. I hate fucking reality shows. Yeah. I hate them. I watched them all when we had people talking to me about doing one, which would be me visiting people in foreign prisons, visiting their families first here. I can relate. They know me. I know them. And visiting the people there and doing a reality show. So these people said, well, the first one is let's have Billy go back to Turkey because it'll be good publicity and we'll do the show.
Whoa.
So I said, yeah, wait a second. We've discovered that the Interpol warrant had been dropped. I contacted the Turkish government. I went to the Turkish consulate in L.A., all of which is being filmed by this lady who followed me everywhere. And they put in a request, and it was denied. They wouldn't let me go back. They didn't want to have anything more to do with Billy Hayes because their tourism dropped 95% when Midnight Express came out.
I would think
when
so.
When the movie came out.
Because everybody thinks they're going to go there and wind up...
destroyed their tourism. It just... And everybody, to this day, people say, Turkey, oh, no, Midnight Express will never go there. Well, no. Do go there. It's an amazing country. I like the people. Don't get busted. You won't like the jail. I guarantee you that. But that's true of any country you go to. You won't like the jail. Maybe Sweden. Who knows? But even Sweden, they're rioting these days. But, the country is different. But where am I?
So you went back.
So they wouldn't allow me. We tried. We ended up contacting through a friend, Ahmet Erdogan, who's the head of Atlantic Records. He founded them, one of the most famous Turk in the world, rich and amazing guy. He wasn't so thrilled about Billy Hayes at first, but then he went online. Somebody showed him YouTube. There's a bunch of clips. YouTube. I mean, everywhere. There's clips of me talking about how I'd like to go back to Turkey. I can't, but I'd like to go. And that, again, I wish that the film had shown some good Turks, and it's not valid to them. It's not valid to my experience or to Turkey. So he heard that. So he invited me in. So I went and visited him in his palatial suite over somewhere in L.A. where he's staying at the hotel and at the peninsula. And we ended up talking. And then he came to the house of the filmmakers, and we sat for about 2 hours where me and Ahmet Erdogan did an interview. Mm-hmm. And then they cut it down to about a 23-minute piece that he was taking back to Turkey. He was going to put it on TV. His TV, which he owns, the TV station in Turkey. He was going to put it on TV, and he said, once everybody sees what you've said, that you like Turkey and that, it'll change things and you'll be able to go back, which was great. He was our champion. Before that happened, he went to Madison Square Garden, Rolling Stones concert. He tripped over some cables, fell down, hit his head, went into a coma. He was an elderly gentleman, and he never came out of the coma. He died. So our champion was dead. We thought, it's finished. A year went by, nothing. One day I get a phone call from a Turkish guy who speaks terrific English, and he starts talking to me, and he said, we've seen on YouTube where you talk about how Turkey, you'd like to blah, 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 blah. He said, we have a conference coming up in Turkey, and we would like to bring you back there and have you say what you're saying. There'll be a lot of international press, and it'll be a chance for you said you'd like to get back. And I said, I'd like to do this. And he said, great, I'll contact you.
Now, do you need to verify that?
Well, there's a lot of things that need to be verified.
I would think you
First off, I talked to my lawyer, who's been my friend forever, and he said, well, we need to do some checking. He checked around to try and find out if the Interpol warrant is still valid, and he discovered that it's not. It's not real easy to get answers, but he could check places, and nobody had an Interpol warrant for Billy Hayes, from William Hayes out there. So that seemed to be good. That was done. What I was coming down to was people usually, and countries usually act in their own best interest. The worst thing for Turkey would have more bad publicity from Billy Hayes. The best thing would be a chance for me to go back and have this maybe balanced a little bit. That's what I was looking for. I got a whole country of people who hate me. I'm the most hated man in Turkey. Yeah. And for the speech in the fucking movie that I didn't write. Right. I said, I forgive you. Yeah. That's all I could do. Nelson Mandela, he came out of 26 years of prison. He said, if you leave prison and you don't leave the anger and the bitterness behind, you're still in prison. And that's just so true. Yeah. So I got that. So I let it all go. If they had said that in the movie, maybe they wouldn't have hated me as much. Right. But they got all that. So now I'm that guy. But here's a chance to balance it. Months went by. Nothing happened. I talked to, again, my New York friends. They hear the story. It's all like, hey, you hear about hey, come on down to Yankee Stadium this weekend and claim your prize. You've been selected. And all these idiots with 90 traffic tickets get busted in Yankee Stadium. So all my New York friends, especially, they're all so cynical. But months went by. Nothing happened. So I figured, that's all dead. And one day on a Friday afternoon, I get a phone call from this guy. He said, good, it's set, it's done. Monday, we're flying you to Turkey, blah, 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 blah. He's like, holy shit. So I tell Sally, and that's who's doing the doc, and they have to buy. The Turkish National Police paid for my ticket. Sally had to buy her own ticket. She and her husband, both, he's the director, she's the writer and the doc maker. On Monday, we fly to Istanbul. I'm actually feeling pretty good. I want to get back. I want to balance it. I need karmically. I need to balance. I need to make this better. I need to heal the breach between all these people and me. And my family's all freaked out. My wife's a little freaked out, but she also knows this could be a good thing. And I'm feeling pretty good. They're filming all this, by the way, until I fall asleep and I wake up with the announcer saying, fasten seatbelts. We're about to land in Istanbul. And I wake up and it's like, holy shit, what am I doing? And Sally has actually got a camera right here with me waking up to, holy shit, it's Istanbul. Yeah. We stop and we come out and there's 4 cops standing right at the bottom of the ramp. Oh. Those 4 policemen, I say the cops, these are guys who, they all went to like John Jay College here. They speak better English than you and me. Right. They're all brilliant PhDs. They're going to go into politics. Smart guys, but they're all badass cops. They were around me the 4 days I was in Istanbul. I never got outside the phalanx of these 4 cops. There was a guy sleeping in a chair outside my hotel room door all night. They were here. The best thing that could happen would be images of Billy Hayes walking down the streets of Istanbul free. The world can see that. We can talk about coming back. It feels good. The worst thing would be me walking down the street free and having somebody put a bullet in my head. Somebody whose tourism business maybe got ruined because of, and there's a national psyche. The Turks had to deal with this image, this impression that this film is so powerful. For 30 years, I've been telling the story. I wish they'd shown something with Turks. Who hears my voice? They see the images on the screen. Yep. It's part of Sally's documentary is about how film can affect people, can affect countries, and how it seeps down through and permeates the culture in so many ways. Turkey was so affected by this movie. And here's a chance for me to go back and help balance it. So these 4 cops, they picked me up at the bottom of the airport. We actually landed about midnight, which I kind of liked, at the Istanbul airport, and they took me into this little room. They kept Sally and Tony. They actually separated us and put us off, and they took me into this little room at the airport. And I'm sitting in a little room in the Istanbul airport with about 6 cops, and I thought, I've been here before. This doesn't feel so good. And they're doing paperwork. Actually, before we even got there, they brought me in, and the girl behind the thing with the passports, they take my passport. The head cop, he's a very cool guy. I'm still friends with on Facebook now. He shows her the passport, and she does this, and she puts some things in, and she freezes. And her eyes widen because coming up on the screen is whatever the William Hayes passport information in Turkey. It's like, eek, eek, eek. And she looks up and says, yeah, we know, it's fine. And she's, no, but look what's there. Yeah. They have a temporary 4-day injunction thing because I'm forbidden to come into the country. And I'm on the watch. Me, Osama bin Laden, and the rest of the terrorists. I'm on the same list, literally, as those guys in Turkey to come into the country. And she say, you can't. He say, no. So they take me in the little room, and they're having to do paperwork. And I'm sitting there for about 20 minutes. And I'm beginning to get a little nervous now because where's Sally and Tony? I don't see them. They're somewhere out there. They wouldn't let them come in. It's just me and the cops. All this stuff coming through, but they got it done, and they took us back, and again, they took me back to the hotel. They were having an international conference, the 2nd annual, I keep forgetting the name, it's weird, I blot this out, Peace and Global Security, or Democracy, or something, but it's a big international conference. There are 1,000 policemen from 63 countries coming here to talk about global security, and the world press is there too, so they wanted to bring me there. These cops, they took it upon themselves to do this. I actually took a really big risk. Their careers were on the line because if something went wrong, somebody's going to get their nuts cut off. And it's true. These 4 guys, they didn't get permission from high up. They got somebody, some minister to sign something, probably drunk, stoned minister to sign a piece of paper that they gave to the girl that allowed me to come in for the 4 days. And then they watched me. That's why they were watching me, because they were afraid I might get shot or something.
And the irony was when you were first caught, you were surrounded by 4 cops.
There you go. And that's why I'm back in this room. It's like, holy shit, I've been here before. What am I doing? I have made mistakes before. I hope this isn't one of them now. I hope my New York friends weren't right about this shit.
Well, it's incredibly brave to go back. It really was.
Well, they thought so too. In fact, they used the Turkish word and they said, "You got some stones." That's a Turkish. That's what they call it. You got some stones on you. It's like, yes, and I needed this. I needed to. Again, there was a karmic thing. I needed to reconnect. I needed to rebalance. I have all these. Turkey, Istanbul was my youthful dream. It was, the first 3 trips I made there was all part of this fantasy, this incredible life, this pirate life that I thought I could live, who I thought I was. And I loved Istanbul. I loved Constantinople. Yeah. I'm a history major. I love Byzantium. I know the city. I read everything about it. And then I did the prison time, which showed me another side of it. But I wanted to get back. And it turned out to be a wonderful thing.
Because it gives you closure in a way.
It does, exactly. It gave me closure. It gave them closure. At one point, I was in this big conference room. We have some photos, and several guys have said, "You look very sheepish in this picture." I'm sitting in a conference room in Istanbul, surrounded by 1,000 policemen. Yes, I'm feeling very sheepish. But they did a press conference. I got to talk about it. I got to apologize for the damage that the film has done to Turkey and their image.
Even though technically you weren't responsible.
I said to them, I claim my book. It is what it is. You like it, you don't like it, but it's not so bad for them. You can't deny. This is your prison, this is your shit. It is what it is.
Yeah, a story about an American prison would be just as brutal.
Any prison would be just anywhere, like Alabama or any place else. It's a bad place. But the film itself, and I told them I didn't write that scene in the courtroom. What I said was, and I told them what I said, very different. And the overall impression that all bad Turks. I said it's not like that. I wish we didn't have it. That's one reason I'm back here today, to let the world know. It's not like Midnight Express.
Right.
It's not like your prisons are nice places. Let's not get carried away by all this, because I had friends who did 5 more years after I got out. In fact, in Midnight Return, the sequel book, I weave my story out here with what happened to him for the next 5 years inside, which was not good for him.
And that's coming out.
That's coming out in the fall. Midnight Return. I can't get away from it. I got Midnight Express, I got the Midnight Express letters, and I got Midnight Return coming up. We just came back from London. Oh, you won't even believe this. My wife and I just got back from London. They did the Midnight Express ballet.
A ballet?
Fucking ballet. Again, all my New York friends like, fucking ballet. Are you shitting me? They make you wear a tutu. What is this?
But,
it was brilliant. It was just brilliant.
How do you do ballet after they just beat your feet, though? This doesn't quite make sense.
No, this guy, Peter Schalfus, he's Danish. He runs a ballet company. He was a world-famous ballet dancer in his day. He ran companies. He read the book in 1979. He always wanted to do it. He does pop ballet. He did one on Princess Diana, who he was her coach for a while. Then he did one on Elvis. He did one on the Rolling Stone, sort of to expand the field of ballet. How many times can you go to see Swan Lake, even once?
It's true, though. And you saw it? Like, was it?
It was brilliant. I saw 2 or 3 rehearsals, which blew me away. And then I actually went to the first 3 nights of the show. And it was so overwhelming emotionally for me, especially there's a scene where my dad comes to visit, and they brought in a 63-year-old ballet dancer who hadn't been on stage in like 35 years.
Damn, he did the
but
That's cool.
It wasn't too demanding physically. He's still in good shape, but emotionally there was a lot, and he made it happen. And that scene tore me up. But they were wonderful. They were amazing, and it worked. And they used some music from the film. They didn't have a license for it, so if they go somewhere else, but the music is so brilliant, and they use Mozart, so that between the 2 of them, it made an amazing night. He said, I said, how this is going to turn out? He said, I'll tell you how it's going to turn out. The critics are going to hate it. They hate everything I do because it's not the classical ballet, but the audience will love it. I'm looking down, they had me in a little balcony boothy thing, and then the audience was down here, and I'm watching it, and I also needed a little distance from everybody, and I'm looking down, and I see this dapper old English gentleman with a cane and a top, the whole tail, dressed to the nines, like a ballet guy, and next to him is this punk girl with purple hair and rings in her nose, and both of them are just fascinated watching the same show. It's like really expanding the ballet audience, which was great. The audience loved it. The critics hated it. The English papers are brutal.
Yeah, well, as long as the audience loved it.
The audience, that's what we said. The audience loved it. I didn't care. And we were over there for a week. I actually got to go up to Birmingham afterwards and shoot a small part in the film for a couple of days. So as an actor, it was great. I got to play an American billionaire who is in charge of all of the anti-pornography and smut division in England, and I'm actually a pervert who has been molesting my now 16-year-old daughter, the lead in the film. From 8 to 16, I've been molesting her. So I've got to do some acting, do a little work there. It was pretty bizarre film, actually, but a great script.
Great experience.
Yeah. It was wonderful. Man, as an actor, I don't work all that much anymore. It's too hard to get jobs. The older you get, the fewer jobs there are, and the more established people get them. I direct a lot of theater still, and I act in theater because I love theater.
That's great.
Yeah, theater is good for the wallet.
Now, do you have like a site?
Make a lot of money.
Do you have a site other than where people can get it at Amazon.com, the book? But do you have a site for things like that?
I have BillyHayes.com, which also takes you to MidnightExpress.tv. And both of those are my website, which is sort of together. Again, I can barely open him. I had a kid literally put this together. It needs more work, and he quit. He went off to do something else, and I need to be doing more work. I need to get it up and...
I can connect you with some people who can do that for you.
I'm probably going to need some because it's there. It's got a few things on, and it's got some shit that we posted, but... supposedly you're supposed to go every day and work. I don't do that stuff. It's like they put me on Facebook. I don't want to be on Facebook. I don't want to be out there exposed. I'm doing the opposite. I'm trying to get away from it. But now that I'm out here promoting product, you have to do it these days. So I'm on Facebook. I now have like 1,200 friends. I've been banned by Facebook 3 times now.
For what?
For over-friending, and during the politics, I got involved. I try not to. My wife's saying, "What? You're wasting your energy."
Yeah, you can't. You can't get involved.
I couldn't. This last election, I'm reading shit that people are writing. And it's this friend of mine from college, he's writing all this nasty anti-Obama shit. I could have let it go, but just the way he did it. I know this guy, and I wrote back to him. I said, I know you from 1969. You were a racist back then. I heard you talking about niggers getting free rides. You can't post this shit and without that being exposed. He went ballistic, and apparently I got reported by Facebook, so I was banned for 2 weeks.
So he must have reported you.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Pussy.
And I went back on, and I did some more, and I got banned for 7 days, 14 days, and then a month. And after a month, the elections were over, so now I'm done with all that. Now I'm just promoting my book, and I'm not getting into political discussions unless this idiot posts some more shit. Actually, I what did I do? I unfriended that.
Smart move.
Yeah,
it's a
so
smart
I don't have
move.
to deal with it. But there's still other people.
You can't get it makes you crazy.
I get these right-wing idiots posting shit that
I know.
burns me, and I just can't let it go, and I write back, and then they write back, and but I can remember. Is my wife going to hear this? She'll never hear this podcast.
I can't say yes or no.
Your friends won't, but she won't. Oh, good. At one point, I got into an argument with somebody online, and he started writing shit about my mother, like, hello, about my mother and my wife, but really nasty shit. And I don't know where I was, but I was not the balanced 66-year-old, calm, rational guy that I think I am. And I was asking him, it's midnight, you want to meet at the north end of the sheep meadow in the park and discuss this further? And he said, well, I'm working tomorrow. I said, so you don't want to come out? You just want to be a Facebook bully? And he said, where do you want to meet? It's like, he's writing, where do you meet? I said, half hour, I can be at the north end of the sheep meadow in Central Park. Let's talk about it then. Right. Are you going to be there? And he said, oh, yeah, you don't have a job, so you can stay up all night. I said, are you going to be there? Well, fuck you, you asshole. It's like, so you're not going to be there, you chicken shit motherfucker. And then I click it off. But other people who are reading the stuff start writing in about, both of you guys, calm down. And how dare you, the other guy, because it was his family stuff that I got involved in. I know one of the people, and he's saying, get off this fucking line. I say, it's a social network. I'll write what I want. If you can't handle it, that's what led to all this stuff. And his friends and his girlfriend and people are writing. And my friend, who is the connection to this, he says, Billy, would you please just stop? These are my family people. This idiot, he's writing, I'm 6'3", and I'll handle you. I say, fuck you, bring it on, you motherfucker. It's like, I finished this up. I sort of went to sleep, and I woke up the next day, and it's like, was I really telling some guy who I don't even know to meet me at the north? And I was ready. I was in a mood. I'm ready to be at the north end of.
Well, as he starts bringing your family into it.
Well, that's what I thought too. You want to talk like, and I don't. But
that was actually Franco. We had him do it.
You motherfucker. So actually, I'm on Facebook.
I'll find you.
There you go.
And one last thing,
talk
actually.
About acid.
Yeah.
You actually had one question about the reality of a scene in a movie, right?
What do I?
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Yes. Okay, so like Midnight Express is one of like the first movies I ever watched with my dad.
Right.
Which was when I was like 10 or 11.
Parents make their kids watch it as a cautionary tale, which is good.
You know what's funny is I'm Spanish, so like I don't think I'll be traveling anywhere. I'm pretty poor, so like I don't know if that was what it was. I just think like
and your skin color, they look for you right away.
Yeah. We like bonded over like violent movies a lot, so I don't know why. It's just like a dad son bond. But there was always that one scene, and there was the masturbation scene with the glass. And like I always wondered, like, did that actually happen?
That was an accurate scene. My girlfriend came to visit. I wanted to show me her tits, so she had very nice tits, and she kind of, we were in the glass like this, and she kind of opened her blouse like this, and I got to see her tits a little bit. I didn't beat off in the booth like they had Brad doing, but I was like thrilled to see her, but it was scary, you know, for her, more so even for me. Yeah. What really scared her was just how fucked I was, because she'd made visits earlier, and then she was, again, my connection to the feminine. I write back and forth for months and months and months, and then she saw me, and I was in pretty bad shape when she saw me, and that really scared her because I was just desperate.
Yeah, your story horrified me for like years.
Yeah. A lot of people. Yeah. Again, I have parents tell me that they make now this Locked Up Abroad recently did their version of it.
Right.
TV, you know, more people in 1 week showing of Locked Up Abroad than I've seen Midnight Express in 40 years. I talked about the numbers. The people at Locked Up, who I love, they were terrific. They said, our show airs in 163 countries. We have 415 million viewers. And they've aired my show that they did 3 years ago 35 times since I wish I'd be getting paid each one, which they don't do, but it's spreading the word out there.
Yeah.
The response to Locked Up Abroad was one of the reasons I sort of came out of my cave and wrote this new book, and I'm doing a play. I got all sorts of stuff.
Well, it's great, and and I cannot thank you enough for spending the time with us.
My pleasure.
Riveting story from beginning to end.
Thank you for having me here, for pushing the book. And
no problem. I want everybody to go to Amazon.com, go to BillyHayes.com, and I will hook you up with the web guy I know. So if you want to get your site going.
Good.
Yeah,
all right.
And we'll definitely do that.
And, but thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Billy Hayes, thank you again. Later, motherfuckers.